His name was removed from the ballot papers as MK party leader. Meanwhile, earlier this week, the state referred the court to other videos which were taken 2 days before the July 2021 riots, where it alleged Khanyile was mobilizing crowds to join the unrest. The trial continues. Executive Mayor of the Nkangala District Municipality, Thomas Ngwenya, says that the executive will use the passing of its former Deputy President, David Mabuza, to reconnect local communities with the party. Ngwenya was speaking at a memorial service for Mabuza in the district, one of three being held in Mpumalanga province today. Ngwenya says that ANC cadres in the Nkangala District Municipality hold Mabuza in high regard and remember campaigning together with him ahead of the May 2024 general elections.
When he came here to campaign, it was his last days, and therefore we wanted to afford the people of Steve Tshwete who campaigned with him, but also ensure that Steve Tshwete, people of Steve Tshwete, they reconnect with the African National Congress, reconnect with the municipalities in providing quality basic services as taught by Comrade Didi Mabuza, the CAT. And as a result of that, we are looking forward to 2026 local government, because you'll recall that in 2024, the ANC in this municipality did not do well. We obtained 37%, and we want to achieve approximately 60%.
Russia has carried out another massive overnight bombardment of Ukraine, with the capital Kyiv facing the brunt. 2 people have been killed there and at least 16 others wounded. Officials say residential and office high-rises and medical centre and industrial facilities have been damaged. The BBC's Paul Adams has the details.
For an awful lot of people, this was another night spent huddled in corridors, in bathrooms, away from windows, in the underground and in various bomb shelters. This is becoming the norm. There was a time when this was an occasional event, and even though the city's air defences are pretty good at knocking things out of the sky and minimising the damage, I think the kind of cumulative effect of all of this is pretty corrosive.
Recapping the top story, the DA has relied on the Powers and Privileges Act to lay criminal charges against Police Minister Senzo Mchunu. The act makes it unlawful to lie to Parliament. I'm Ondilambana for SFM News. Headlines at 3:30.
It's a very good afternoon to you. In your SFM Sports headlines, it's athletics. Caster Semenya wins victory at Europe's High Court. And we'll also bring you action. We're building up tonight to the Women's Africa Cup of Nations champions. Banyana out to keep their perfect record intact. Details around 3:30.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation. This Mandela Month, Nelson Mandela once said,
"We have traveled a long journey. We have fought for peace and reconciliation, for social justice, for all men, women, and children."
SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Every person, no matter who you are, what music you're inclined to listen to, and what you do with your weekends, you need a weekend playlist. It's that musical mix of music that accompanies the lazy weekends, whether catching up with friends and family or just taking some time to reflect. Tune in to The Soundtrack of Your Life with me, Ernest Pillay, Saturdays and Sundays, 1 to 4 on SAFM.
So perhaps you need to make a note of Sun and Sunday, right? And I'm talking about Chasing the Sun, because SABC Sport brings you that powerful documentary, Chasing the Sun, about the Springboks and their amazing tale, which ultimately ended in World Cup glory in 2019. So starting this Sunday, 7:30 p.m. You can tune in then every Sunday for the highs, the heartache and the heroics that made rugby history. And you can also stream each chapter on SABC Plus anytime, anywhere, no subscription needed. There we are, Chasing the Sun, this Sunday, 7:30 p.m. on SABC2. Be there when history shines.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
So what are we going to talk about? I do often say when I jump into an Uber, I get these conversations with the Uber drivers, but I can't tell that today because I didn't use an Uber. But what are we going to talk about? Can we actually ignore, for example, the issue that started on Sunday and say, let's not talk about the issues around the SAPS and other things, in particular the claims of Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. In fact, we can't ignore it, can we? So we just have to talk about it. So we will talk about it. And both at the MK party, as well as the DA now laying charges for maybe slightly different charges, but in essence to the same end around the same people. And we will talk about that and more. I'm sure you may have comments about Caster Semenya and the findings that Zai just announced on air just now, and there's more than that. There's also developments around the position of the ICC taking up a position against Afghanistan in their treatment of women in particular, so that comes up too. My name's Ashraf Garda. Welcome to the show. As always, this is the National Pulse. But hey, what is it that moves the pulse today? What does your pulse rate tell you? I just wonder. And now, as we've done some tweaks, so the moment we have the first story done, we'll get to your call. So you can get in very, very quickly. 086 000 2032 to call in. You can WhatsApp 0614 104 107. And that's text or voice note, 30 seconds max if you're doing a voice note. And then you can tweet right away. What about tweeting and say, hey, I'm here, listening wherever you may be in the country, in the world. Tweet using the hashtag The National Pulse and then tag SAFM Radio and tag me, Ashraf Garda. Right, let me not then delay talking about that one big story. So just about every day in the last few days, somebody and someone is saying something and doing something regarding the pronouncements made by Mkhwanazi on the one hand and what may or may not be said by others, right? So the latest development now is that the MK party has opened a criminal case against the police minister, Senzo Mchunu, as well as the Deputy National Police Commissioner, Major General Shadrack Sibiya. And the reasoning, I understand. In fact, we're going to find out the reasoning, why, what will be the essence of their charge. With me is the MP for the MK party, Mazluman Skhosana. Appreciate your time and thanks for connecting to us on the National Pulse. Mazluman, do I have you there? Maybe not. Let's see if we can. Okay, let's see if we can do that in just a second or two. I'll tell you what, there's nothing stopping you in the meantime as we just reconnect with our guest to just give me your sense of where you are right now. And I asked this the other day, and I'll put this again to you. Are you see there's two ways to look at it. On the one hand, regarding the allegations against Senzo Mchunu, there could be particularly him as a Minister of Police, there could be a sense of further disgruntlement and anger and disillusionment about South Africa to say, look at this place, man, we are just complete mess. And we often hear people say, this is a crime scene on the one hand. But on the other, the fact that you can get someone who heads up policing in the KZN region, effectively fingering the Minister of Police, I mean, that's a good thing, isn't it? If that would be the case, to say, hold it, we're not going to allow this to just be whisked away. So let's get the position of the MK party. Their MP is Mazluman Skhosana. Good to connect with you on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon to your listeners. And I'm so elated once again. This national dialogue is for free.
Yeah,
it's not 700,000 or 700 million.
Well, I agree.
What Mkhwanazi has done in this country, in fact, he has exposed that we can do other things without paying for it. Look now, since Sunday, we are talking about what the Provincial Commissioner of KwaZulu-Natal, the damning allegations, which indeed has eroded the public trust in the police force. And we are very, very happy that, and we are supporting him 100%, that somebody had to take this decision to say, I can't keep quiet forever.
Okay, so let's then talk about, so we know certainly what Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi has done. What has the MK party done? You've You have a position on this and you've taken a stance too. Tell me about it.
What we have done already, we've already opened a case, against both the minister, Senzo Mchunu, and Shadrack Sibia, General Shadrack Sibia, who's the deputy commissioner, by the way, to the South African Police Service. And we have opened a case of perjury and defeating the end of justice. And indeed, we will look, because as we have seen in the Phala matter, that there will be the close ranks, cover up, if you remember, Rode in the Phala matter. And the president, we don't have that confidence, but we are calling him, to bring back the dignity of all the South African citizens.
But I mean, you see, here's the point. If you're laying criminal charges, but if you're laying criminal charges in this case, it's not for the president to make a decision. It's very different to, proposing a commission of inquiry into these type of things, right? So give me the basis of the criminal charges that have been laid. I mean, what's the basis of it?
No, what I said, I don't even want to waste your listeners' time. It was labeled bad in the open on Sunday by General Mkhwanazi. What we did, we exactly opened a case against the minister and Senzo Mchunu and Sibia, based on what we were told by General Mkhwanazi. And General Mkhwanazi backed it up with some evidence. So for me, from where I'm sitting, I'm very happy that the public knows about this thing. One, because you want to know why on which basis.
Yes, please.
The obstruction of justice. That's number one. Obstruction of justice by Senzo Mchunu. It's common law. What I'm talking about. For me to explain that is interference in active criminal investigation, especially when General Sibia said he was the one who instructed the National Commissioner. But today we know that the National Commissioner yesterday denied that he has ever wrote any letter or be instructed by the minister to say that tasked him targets has to be removed.
Okay, so
what is more concerning as well is that there's one member of parliament who's involved. But that will be revealed as time goes on, because as a portfolio committee, we have asked the chair to call for an urgent meeting. The speaker has responded, though we are not happy as Umkhonto weSizwe Party that we should wait for joint sittings or wait for 14 days. This thing which has been revealed it's a matter is of a national importance. In fact, all these things can stop for now and focus on this matter. Okay. Because the minister has abused power.
All right, so one is defeating the ends of justice, right? The other, or I understand one of the charges laid, is perjury. Just explain why perjury.
Perjury, on the 5th of March, the minister lied. Well, in parliamentary term, we say he has misled parliament because he denied that he knows Brown Mokgotsi. Brown Mokgotsi, by the way, Brown Mokgotsi was a chief lobbyist from the northwest of the CR17. And Senzo was the chief lobbyist on the other side of KwaZulu-Natal for the president. Now, it's been revealed now. The minister, as you heard yourself, the things have changed a bit. No, I know him. No, But what I'm saying is, he denied knowing him on the day. He said there's a lot of people who are claiming to know him. He explained himself on the day. But now we know that he misled parliament. That's perjury. Under oath. Remember when he was responding on us, it was under oath. And you wanted to know this criminal conspiracy to defeat the end of justice. Exactly that's the case which I've opened yesterday at Brooklyn.
Now that you made the charge, let the law take its course, right? I think the DA has done something similar too, right? However, what is the
let's leave the DA. Let's leave the DA.
I'm saying no. I'm linking the two because the truth is two parties of significance are doing something very, very similar, and I have to enlighten the public so that they know that. In fact, we will chat to the DA later on, just now as well, right?
Yeah, I don't know about the DA what they've done today.
Okay,
anyway,
I'm saying that right now. My point is, what do you feel as a party about some other suggestions from others to say perhaps a commission of inquiry into the entire police service would better serve South Africa as opposed to laying criminal charges up front?
No, for us, as I said, one of those which have lay unlawful issuing of executive instructions unlawfully, because the section 207 2 in the Constitution only gives that to National Commissioner to operate independent from the minister. Now, if you are talking about the issue of Commission of Inquiry, if there's a time frame that within 30 days, because it's waste of money as well. It's waste of money. We need to have time frames if we have to have that. But we understand. I mean, we've been in this country. How many Commission of Inquiry we had? We now lost over R1 billion with Zondo, the State Commission. Tell me, who was prosecuted on that? R1 billion gone.
Okay.
Now we are saying we have to be mindful of the taxpayers' money, and let's not waste taxpayers' money where people knows that they are going to cover and close ranks.
Okay,
let this thing be in the open.
All right, just the last thing. Of course, many people on the show and others have opinions about Lieutenant Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. What would you like to tell him? If you could send him a one-line message, what would you tell him?
Let me tell you. You just said that if I hear you well, you are saying to me people have different opinion about Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. Have you said that?
I said they have many different views about him. They have views on him on the show. Different people have views about him on the show. And I'm saying to you, and you've got only 30 seconds to answer this very quickly, what is the MK's position if you had to speak to him directly? What would you tell him in one line?
Unwavering support for General Mkhwanazi. He has displayed and shown the other colleagues that how things are supposed to be done in this country. You must have guts to it should not be only about the law, but Mkhwanazi was very clear. It should be about justice for everyone and for this country to be safe. We can't have people who are falsifying and issuing unauthorized instructions.
Okay, and that's where we can leave it. Mazluman Skhosana, the MK Party MP, reflecting on the position of General Mkhwanazi's statements, but also now laying criminal charges against two significant members, effectively in high office in South Africa. This is the National Pulse.
You are the biggest saver we've ever had.
2,794 Rand a month. It was the easiest switch ever.
What was the real deal they could offer you?
870.
That's amazing. You're always getting something out.
Yeah.
I've been battling to get nice car insurance. Outsurance, I found them. I'm saving a cool $360.
Get the real deal with the real savings.
I made the right move.
Go to outsurance.co.za now for a 10-minute quote that could save you thousands.
Just phone Outsurance, get a quote and see what they can offer you. If you don't save that $321 like I did, you might say get a $500 or $1,000 back. Service and savings, you'll always get something out.
How is it that Outsurance provided the solution for you?
918 Rand is what I'm saving.
Incredible. What brought you and Outsurance together?
718 Rand. I end up saving.
They gave you the real deal.
It literally is the real deal.
Go to outsurance.co.za now for a 10-minute quote that could save you thousands. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and information online.
My name is Amogelang Motau, Banyana midfielder. What I love about SABC Sport, you guys have managed to capture women's football stories because I think documentation is important.
Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
X at SFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
All right, so you certainly heard the MK position. By the way, we'll chat to the DA around 5:10 and get, because they've also laid charges now against, certainly based upon what came through on Friday. They've now laid charges, and we'll talk about that with Diane Kohler-Barnard too, right? Now, in the meantime, there are developments, and I did say that from the outset, because I'll get to your calls now. But before that, confirmation now that the president will, this coming Sunday, addressed the nation on developments arising from the public statement by KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi that details allegations against senior police and South African Police Service leadership. As we know, and I'm just reading, Ramaphosa was attending a BRICS summit in Brazil over the last few days, right? Now, the president undertook to attend this development on his return from Brazil in view of the implications for national security. So, confirmation then that he will take the nation into his confidence, 7 p.m., 1900 hours, Sunday, 13th of July. And the president's message will be broadcast and streamed on various platforms. So clearly it's a case of addressing the nation. Right. Let's hear from you on the National Pulse. Firstly, with the position of the MK party.
Hi, Ashraf. How are you? I don't see why this guy is getting angry when you mention DA, because they are fighting same goal. They need one. It's a one answer actually that they are looking for. But when you mention DA, then he gets angry. He's just being childish.
Okay, I don't have to say much further because I think I made my point when I talked to him about it too, right?
Afternoon, Ashraf. I think MK politicians are the last people who can talk about credibility and transparency. No, not MK. They try next door, not MK. No. They can't talk about credibility and transparency. Those politicians made South Africa, put South Africa where it is today. Not from Brixton.
Thanks, Norman. I'm trying to picture that image. They must try next door. Just think about it. Just try next door. Okay, here's another.
Afternoon, Ashraf. Did the president yet return, Ashraf? I was surprised to hear that our president, Ashraf, have attended that focus meeting of BRICS using commercial flight. Does that mean also one of our infrastructure, as usual, have been ruined and in a dilapidation state? That is the president's plane. How can the president travel by everybody's flight? That's why it wasn't easy to return after the caucus meeting. I infer South Africa we used to know is gone, Ashraf. Thanks, Ashraf. Mkete here.
Okay, Mkete. Well, there you are. Interesting take. For many people, it's like, hey, that's good. He's traveling on a commercial flight because he was, right? But it's longer. He can't just, fly when he wants to. Others, like you are, like saying, actually, that means there's something wrong with the presidential flights. Interesting one. But he's now back in South Africa. And as you heard me say, that we've now have a position where he will speak to the nation at 7 p.m. on Sunday, just around the time that Wimbledon should end, I think. I'm just saying.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. This is Patrick from Soweto. Ashraf, I think Mr. Mkhwanazi has done a great job. Point number one, to expose the corruption, because we don't have leadership. We don't have also the political will. So we are very happy about this outcome. If we had a strong leadership, we wouldn't face such situation like that. So we don't have leadership. Ramaphosa is failing us as South Africans. He's failing. He's not going to act. He's not going to remove that minister. If he failed to push the agenda, state capture. So he's not going to remove that minister of police. Thank you, Patrick in Soweto.
Okay, there we are. That's another position about not going to remove. Let's see what happens. There's also a comment about someone who's very much in the news in the last couple of days. His name is Paul O'Sullivan.
Hi, Ashraf. This is Monde from Kabeja. Ashraf, Paul O'Sullivan came into air on SAFM the other day. I can't remember whose show was this. And he claimed that Mkhwanazi was also being investigated. Can you please shed light on that, please? Because we don't seem to be discussing that on SAFM. We're just focusing on all the people that Mkhwanazi.
No, in fact, it was on Tulas's show, and it's been discussed on that show, and there was reaction on Kathy's show. Now, we all can't focus on one person. I mean, he made his points. Of course, we're speaking to different political parties because the news in that position, the news cycle changes, really does change every hour. As you now heard, we didn't know this just now. Now we know that the president's having a family meeting of sorts on Sunday night. So that gives you a sense of how much changes every single moment, right? Here's another.
Ashraf, good afternoon. Flores from the beautiful Western Cape. Ashraf, by now, I would have wanted for Cyril Ramaphosa to call a family meeting. We need to restore the confidence in the police ASAP. And you know what? I'm very disappointed in our first citizen. He is numb. This is so sad. Have a good show. Bye-bye.
Well, there we are. Okay, so this voice note of yours was obviously sent just as we started the show, and within a few minutes there was confirmation that in fact he is having this meeting. So he's not numb, but he has been in Brazil, as you know now, and he will speak to all of us on Sunday. So perhaps here's a question to you and a question to me as well. So you know he's going to talk, right? We don't know what he's going to say, okay? But what would you like him to say? And I know he's speculating, but I mean, seriously, he's going to address you and me. We are disgruntled, we're disillusioned with so many things. What would you like to hear from the president if he speaks for only 5 minutes? You're looking for maybe 3 important points that you expect him to say to you and to the nation. What would that be? I certainly want to hear you. It's 3:30. Here's the news headlines.
Thank you, Ashraf. On the news headlines, both the DA and the EFF have laid a complaint with the Ethics and Executive Members Committee against Police Minister Senzo Mchunu. The High Court in Johannesburg has reserved judgment in a case that the Labour Party of South Africa brought in an attempt to interdict the upcoming national dialogue. And at least 15 Palestinians, including 8 children and 2 women, have been killed in an Israeli strike near a medical point in central Gaza. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the R21 northbound in Centurion has a crash reported before Nelma Pierce Drive, and the N3 northbound in Bedfordview queuing on the link to the N12 East at Gilulis interchange. And in KZN, South Coast Road is where truck congestion is reported. That's in the Rosberg area, so you are to expect delays there. And the N2 southbound has a stationary vehicle reported after Umgeni Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good to connect with you today, because that means Tumi is not around and the whole country's been wondering where is she. We'll have to find out. But maybe the next important question is, you have news on Caster Semenya. Let's make sense of it.
Oh yeah, Ashraf. And you know what? Just like that, the world finally catching up with Caster. And you know, it's a pity that it took them a whole human rights court to do so. And that's the top European court saying that a Swiss court did not give double Olympic champion Caster Semenya a fair trial in a much awaited appeals. And that's a ruling over contested gender testing. The European Court of Human Rights decision comes after a row engulfed the 2024 Paris Olympics over the gender of an Algerian boxing champion. Semenya, a 34-year-old South African runner, is classed as having differences and has been legally identified as female. And she's been unable to compete in her favoured 800-metre category since 2018 after she refused to take drugs to reduce her testosterone levels under new rules from World Athletics, the governing body that's for track and field. So yeah, breaking news from the European Court of Human Rights ruling, and that's going to be, you know, unprecedented to see how Caster has gone onto the global stage, and I think paving the way for a lot of representation at that level. Let's go to more athletics news, and it's the South African road running star Kabelo Maluatsi aiming to break the national 10-kilometer record of 27.28, that's 27 minutes 28 seconds, set by the American-based Adrian Wilshire on the 13th of April in Gqeberha. Maluatsi plans to shatter this record in the upcoming Absa Run Your City 10 kilometers in Durban this weekend. The much-anticipated race kicks off at the Masabalala Yengwa Avenue at 8 a.m. and finishes at the Durban beachfront on Sunday with over 10,000 entries already sold. Now, soccer news. Former Sekhukhune United midfielder Kamoelo Sithole has expressed delight after signing with Marumo Gallants ahead of the 2025-26 PSL season. Sithole was one of 10 new players flaunted by Gallants earlier this week, along with new coach Alexandra Lafitte.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the R21
it's a new chapter for everyone. I think it's his first time being in South Africa, and it will be his first job here. So I can't say how grateful I am for the opportunity because it's new for everyone. Like I said, it's a new chapter. We're looking forward to complete and get the best out of each other.
Elsewhere, Lionel Messi became the first player to score multiple goals in 4 straight MLS games as he helped Inter Miami beat New England Revolution 2-1. And we've got news from the Double Dakar Rally motorcycle champion Sam Sunderland gearing up to ride around the world in 19 days, a record bid that the Briton expects to be mentally more challenging than anything he's ever done before. The bid launched today targets a record of 19 days, 8 hours and 25 minutes set in 2002 by Kevin and Julia Sanders for the fastest circumnavigation of the globe, and that's by a motorcycle. We'll be revving our engines. That's top of the hour for SAFM.
Before you run away, what's your take on the Caster Semenya story?
Wow, Ashraf, where do we even begin with that story? Because it's been around for so long. She hasn't been able to compete. Now she can't compete anyway. And she's an Olympic icon and has been the center of this long, painful battle. And this is a vindication moment.
But athletics has not dismissed that ruling, right? This is one court, not another. But in reality, in terms of an athletics career, that's long gone now.
Long gone. It's such a pity, but it's also poetic in a way because, we talk about women's football and then African excellence with Banyana Banyana, and there's Caster's name now, and it's etched where it belongs, and that's at the top. So thanks to her, you will see, like the Algerian boxer as well, having to go gender eligibility testing. And she was born a woman, so let's hope more and more young girls see this as well as something that they don't have to put up with or endure and have their careers curtailed at such an early juncture.
I can think of a whole legal case against damages against Caster Semenya coming up soon. I mean, that's what I would think. Okay, good to connect. By the way, we're going to chat about just that to Professor Ross Tucker coming up shortly. So listen out for that, Zai, that comes up shortly. This is the National Pulse.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation.
I'm Shakira O'Malley and I'm a centre back. What I like so much about living in South Africa is the beaches. So being able to go to the beach and just relax and just let go of literally everything. I had a good laugh this morning at breakfast. I think we were all just having a conversation. Everybody was interacting. If I won $1 million after a good game, I'd definitely not tell my teammates. Definitely not. I'm taking that $1 million and going home. Tune in to SABC Sport to watch Banyana Banyana compete at the AFCON and defend another title.
Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Mr. Govender, congrats on the retirement. You just sold your car to We Buy Cars. Tell us about it.
Yes, it just gathered dust in the garage, so I exchanged it for cold hard cash. Now my wife and I can enjoy a stress-free retirement.
Retiring the car as you retire. Nice. So why We Buy Cars?
It was so quick. They came over to our house to do the evaluation, and we sold it the same day. Tops, man.
Okay, so now you got even more time on your hands, eh?
Exactly.
We Buy Cars. Geared for your next chapter. Geared for you. SAFM music crafted to make you feel real good. Handpicked just for your pleasure. Classics sounding so good only on SAFM. X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Okay, as soon as I can, I will take calls too. We'll chat to Professor Ross Tucker as well shortly. But let's get to an issue that's important globally as well, right? The ICC, which is the International Criminal Court, not to be confused with the ICJ, which is the International Court of Justice. So the ICC's prosecution office now has issued arrest warrants for the Taliban's supreme leader, that's Hibatullah Akhundzada, and the head of the country's Supreme Court, that's Abdul Hakim Haqqani, on charges of persecuting women and girls. What have they done? What are the implications? What happens next? Ibrahim Dean is with me, independent researcher and political commentator. Ibrahim, as always, good to connect with you on the National Pulse.
Thanks for having me.
Right, thank you. What got them to issue these arrest warrants? What's the meat of it?
So, I mean, in current day Afghanistan, women do face a lot of constraints. The Taliban last year issued a new state of laws, which, aside from not enabling them or not allowing them to attend most of high school education, there's constraints on working, constraints on movements in public spaces. And so, the ICC warrant, which had been sought since January this year, basically says that, they treat it as a totally different class of citizen. And, this has affected over 1 million Afghans. And, in light of, or in lieu of the following, seeking the arrest of Akhundzada and Abdul Hakim Haqqani.
Okay, give me some more detail in terms of, there's human rights, there's a global sense of norm, and there's also, religious issues, and there's cultural issues. So what have they done? That's the leadership of Afghanistan that has so, enraged others to the point where it's a wrong, in inverted commas, enough to actually warrant charges from the ICC.
So that's the real question, is whether or not this actually can be punished as is this really a violation of an international law? Because that's, the International Criminal Court was set up to try and prevent crimes against humanity, war crimes, genocide, and to hold individuals directly liable against, for these charges. Now, there is a norm that has been created and implemented by much of the world, including, most Muslim countries, who also have issued statements against, the Taliban's constraints on women's participation, in education, in work.
So just give us more, Ibrahim. When you say women's constraints, like what have they actually not allowed women to do? Yeah.
They aren't able to attend secondary school. Much of the education is curtailed. Many jobs have been closed off. NGOs, the laws last year say they have to walk around with a male guardian, they have to walk around covered, when they walk in public. Now, Afghanistan is a very conservative society, but, these laws do seem, these constraints are in place, and Afghanistan and the Taliban themselves don't even, in their response to the ICC, don't even deny that this is in place. What the Taliban do point out is the double standards. But in saying so, also in terms of the norm, the UN General Assembly on Monday issued a similar resolution, calling on them to actually allow for more, women participation. And the General Assembly is generally seen as the moral standard. The law was passed with 112 votes. I think only two states voting against, which was ironically the US and Israel. It is a norm that's being violated. The Taliban are not claiming that they haven't been violating this norm. They are citing Islamic principles, although, many Muslim countries, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, just last year issued statements against, these laws that have been passed.
Because am I right in saying, in my understanding, you can, in terms of how the Islamic laws or culture plays out, there's generally a sense of certainly keeping, adult males and females separately in terms of how they taught, but there's certainly nothing that suggests they must not learn anything at all. And this is a curtailment on their right to education, right?
No, that's the thing. It's not. Obviously, there's interpretations, but no real Muslim country or majority Muslim country, you would call it, exercises such laws. And in fact, most of them have condemned it and actually advised against it. the Taliban's implementation of these laws. The question though is whether these laws are punishable under the ICC. And two, what is in a sense the implications then of this? Like, the Taliban government is only recognized by one country, which is the Russians. These leaders don't really travel abroad, and the conservative nature of Afghan society means that most of the enforcement of these laws are actually being carried out by the families of women. So there is a sociological or societal conservativeness, but there's also then this overreach in terms of law, and these two then in a sense combine to actually ensure in Afghan society that women are actually treated as second-class citizens.
So therefore, I think there's two important issues here. What has been the response from the Afghani leadership, number one? What has been response from, let's say, culturally the Muslim world, which they're a part of? And thirdly, in terms of, again, the Afghani leadership and their recognition or not thereof of the ICC, because then it depends on what happens next.
Yes, I mean, so, the Afghan leadership have actually, said that they don't recognize the ICC, even though, they have Afghanistan is signed to the Rome Statute in 2003. But also the leadership have pointed out, and I think, in a sense, this is the problem with these institutions, and the fact that they've become so politicized, the double standards, in the fact that, yes, there's a arrest warrants on them, but there's no real justice for the thousands of females in a sense killed in Gaza. In terms of the responses, though, the global community, as part, most Muslim countries have voted for the General Assembly law, that was passed on Monday, which does show that it is, in a sense, against what you would call the norms that most people who claim to be Muslim would subscribe to.
Mm-hmm.
But, in saying so, the implications are very different, would be, a bit more minimal in a sense that, one, as I was saying, no real country except the Russians recognize the Afghan government. And two, the fact that, just 2 days before the US actually issued or basically put Tahrir al-Sham in Syria off its terrorism list. So we're actually seeing a move away from trying to, punish or subscribe or designate groupings more towards something that is looking at geopolitical realities as opposed to, norms, values, and that in a sense is, allowing and enabling many countries, the Taliban leadership being one of them, to be able to get away with, such actions.
Okay. And I mean, lastly, the ICC, my understanding, tries or has findings against individuals. The ICJ would be against countries, and therefore the distinction, between Israel on the one hand and Netanyahu on the other. But I say that only because, and just help us to understand this, if this is correct. The Afghanis don't recognize the ruling of the ICC. I understand that Israel doesn't either, and so and the same applies to the USA. And just correct me if I'm wrong on all of that, because what it does talk about is the issues appear to be forgotten with all of them, the morality of the issues, but just nobody is regarding them. Is to what degree are they actually binding or not?
Yes, I mean, so the US, Israel aren't signatories to the Rome Statute. The Afghans actually are. They signed up in 2003. And, in a sense, have tried to move back on, but the question is whether you can actually move back. Now, as you said, the ICJ is interstate in nature. It looks at countries and governments. The ICC looks at individuals. And that's why the laws are not against the Taliban as a whole, but against Akhundzada at the moment and Abdul Hakim Haqqani. So it's an individual. There is this, the problem with international justice is it seems to be, very realpolitik in nature, in the sense that there's no real enforcement mechanisms. And that enforcement mechanism actually weakens the power. Now, that's why we're looking at things like the General Assembly, which is a bit more norms-based, because it's a voting system and not 15 judges, issued by certain countries, or, whether you can ratify or de-ratify yourself, or looking at those issues. So there is definitely norms violations, but one whether or not it should be punishable by the courts, or whether it falls under the court's jurisdiction. And two is, what then are the implications? Does it make a difference, or is it more just symbolic? And, currently in the case of Afghanistan, based on, the control that the Taliban, have over much of Afghan society, based on the fact that also culturally the society is a lot more conservative than other societies, and based on the fact that from a realpolitik perspective, countries are not looking at that nowadays, and in a sense, Afghanistan actually has much better relations now, the Taliban have with other governments in 2021, 2022. So, that does limit the implications, for them.
Okay, and let's leave it at that. I think the broader question to the general world in South Africa and beyond is like, whatever your cultural norms are, can you be in a situation where at a certain age limit you tell females, in this case, you cannot study further? And I wonder whether others may have a comment on that, no matter what. Ibrahim Dean, appreciate your time here, as always, on the National Pulse. We'll talk about Caster Semenya next.
Reigning champions Banyana believe they can deliver 3 points to the people of the South. Meanwhile, the West Africans Mali have a big task to wrap up their run in Group C with a win. This is the Total Energies Women's Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2024. South Africa tackles Mali on Monday 14 July at 9 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and S3. Also available on SABC radio stations. Where Africa competes, South Africa connects. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
With the ever-changing financial landscape, it can be difficult to make sense of all the moves at times. Join me, Jimmy Moyaha, on the SAFM Market Update with MoneyWeb, Mondays to Thursdays, 6 to 7 p.m, as we break down the key market trends, top financial stories, and smart investment insights, all in one place. It's everything you need to stay financially informed and ahead of the curve.
Night Talk with Oliver Dixon.
When leaders need to account, we call on them. When society needs to debate, reflect, and advance, we're here to have the conversation. Join me, Oliver Dixon, on Night Talk every Monday to Thursday from 10 to 12 midnight.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Let's talk about Caster Semenya. Earlier on, you heard the European Court of Human Rights rule that Caster Semenya was denied a fair hearing in her 7-year legal fight against track and field's sex eligibility rules. Now, it's important to note that the European Court's rulings does not overturn the World Athletics rules, okay? So it's two separate organizations, right? And that effectively ended Semenya's career. So what does this mean? What does this mean to a sporting career? You may say that's a dead end already. But what recourse does she have? With me, Professor Ross Tucker, who's a sports scientist. Prof. Tucker, much appreciate you connecting with us on the National Pulse.
No worries. Thanks for having me on to chat here.
Thank you. Okay, first of all, is it significant, the ruling by the European Court of Human Rights? And if so, why?
I think it is significant. I can't say at this early moment how it's going to be significant, but I think it could be very, in the sense that it changes the way that CAS has to assess some of these cases. I think you said in your introduction there, when the European Court hears Caster Semenya's appeal, they're not assessing the facts of the case. There were no experts arguing about the physiology and the performance advantages and testosterone for the European Court of Human Rights. What they're looking at is the process, and they're asking, did the athlete have every opportunity to have a fair trial? Now, in making the decision they did by 15 votes to 2, they've said no, that Semenya did not have the right to a fair trial. And part of the reason is that when Semenya first appealed the decision at the Court of Arbitration, the Swiss Federal Court didn't treat her appeal with the sufficient rigor and do the necessary diligence that needed to be done. And I think that has massive implications for sports law, because what it means is that there might need to be more oversight of the Court of Arbitration for sport. And so every case, whether it's a doping case, a case like Caster Semenya's, a case about technology use in sport, we had Oscar Pistorius at CAS once, those cases might all need to have a higher standard of legal support provided in future, and that's massive for sports law.
Let's go back, if we can, to when it all started with Caster Semenya, because we know, she broke record after record, and then she stopped running. What caused the change for her to stop running after winning some of those illustrious medals?
Yeah, there was always controversy, and I want to make the point as well that Caster Semenya was not the first athlete to be a subject of this controversy. There'd been athletes before her, and there've been athletes since. And the issue is, when is someone not eligible, or should someone not be eligible to participate in women's sport? Now, we have men's sport distinct from women's sport because of the male advantages that are accumulated as a result of testosterone. We know that males and females are different, and that has massive implications for sports performance. In the case of Semenya, the argument kicked off because biologically Semenya has elevated levels of testosterone, and the question was whether that should be considered an unfair advantage and make her ineligible. That was the very first discussions, all the way back to 2009. And in 2019, her first trip to the Court of Arbitration in Switzerland was to challenge a policy that was saying that in order to compete in women's sports, she had to lower testosterone levels.
And lower means give away some of your advantages. Have I got that right in simple terms?
Yeah, you absolutely would. It would be the same as you or I then taking a drug to suppress our testosterone levels. And male performance advantage is the result of what testosterone does, not just daily, but through our lives. Even before birth, there are differences between male and female fetuses. And then most parents would relate that when children reach puberty and adolescence, all these profound changes happen. Most of those are driven by testosterone. And they create these performance advantages for males compared to females. And that's what Semenya would have gone through by virtue of the biology. And so the fix that sports tried for many, many years to implement was if we'd lowered the testosterone, we would take away that advantage. Now, whether or not that works is almost a separate question. It reduces it, but it doesn't take it away. But her claim to CAS was that she shouldn't have to do it at all.
So, in terms of the finding then, and I'll go back to that, the European Court of Human Rights ruling that Caster Semenya was denied a fair hearing. So the finding was not whether World Athletics were right or wrong in what they found. It was that she was denied a fair hearing. And there is a distinction between the two, right?
Yeah, there is. And the other really important point is the decision relates to how her appeal was heard, not the original case. So you may have seen in the decision that they've awarded 80,000 euros worth of costs. Those costs need to be paid by the Swiss courts, not by World Athletics. So they actually aren't in the dock, as it were, in this case. The European decision that was announced this morning is critical of the way that it's called the Swiss federal courts, how they evaluated Caster Semenya's appeal after the initial Court of Arbitration decision. That's the focus of this. So it gets us into some quite deep Swiss legal weeds, as it were. But you're right. It's not about World Athletics policy. That was never, ever evaluated by the European Court. What was evaluated is, did the athlete, through the process and the legal system, have the opportunity to file that appeal?
Okay, and I take it, forgive my naivety, I take it the opportunity for Caster Semenya from an age point of view to actually run at the highest level is long gone, right? So what sort of recourse does this finding give her in going back to World Athletics and any other court of arbitration in sport, and maybe any others that I don't even know about? Perhaps you can guide us to.
Yeah, the first thing she could do is she could go back to the Swiss federal courts and re-appeal the original decision at CAS. She can't re-litigate at the Court of Arbitration for Sport. And in fact, since the 2019 court case that she lost originally, the policy around athletes with DSDs has changed. In 2023, they introduced an almost new policy. So there's almost no going back anymore. It would have to be a new case. Now, she could bring that, and so could other athletes with similar conditions, and then they would have to be heard. And I wonder whether this decision today will embolden those athletes to say there's more chance now than we thought there was, and we may see those cases come forward. But for Semenya, there's very little now that can be done to go back. You can't really file damages for the loss of earnings, that sort of thing. So it's almost a symbolic victory in the legal sense, but it as we've emphasized, I think it doesn't change the policy. I don't think it changes the science too much. It doesn't reveal anything about World Athletics' approach to this issue. That would all be something for future.
Okay, interesting. You made the point about the loss of earnings. She can't pursue that issue, which is probably the first thing that got to my mind when I heard about this. Right? Let's just end with this then. And I understand it's difficult. There's ambiguity here, but therefore, let's say someone in your position, right? What would you advise Caster Semenya if she came to ask you for advice in terms of what to do next with these findings?
Well, I think that's a question more legal than it is physiological. I'm sure she's asking lawyers that, and I'll give her far better advice than I would. Look, physiologically, I believe that women's sport needs to exclude male advantage. So I actually am in agreement with the World Athletics policies on this issue. I think that there were mistakes in that policy initially in 2019, and I testified at the Court of Arbitration actually in support of Semenya's claim back then. But fundamentally, I actually think that individuals with DSD should not be allowed to compete in women's sport because of that advantage. So it would be a bit of a dilemma for me to advise her or any other athletes with these conditions, because my advice is that based on the fact that I don't believe that they should be eligible to participate in women's sport. But I suppose if I wasn't arguing it from the physiological perspective, she's coaching now, and I think there are other athletes. There's a handful of other athletes with these conditions. I think a collective case that's brought against the authorities might carry more weight than one athlete. And if she wants to win that victory symbolically, then that's what she would have to do now.
Okay. Professor Ross Tucker, sports scientist and moonlighting as a legal man as well. I mean, I think you get my point in jest. Much appreciate your time here on the National Pulse. Let's get to the news headlines. News, in fact, it's just gone 4 o'clock with Ondela.
No worries. Thanks,
Thank you. Thank you.
Ciao.
Thank you, Ashraf. On the top stories, Ramaphosa to address the nation on Sunday, and children queuing for supplements killed in Israel airstrike. For SAFM News, I'm Ondela Mbana, and a very good afternoon. President Cyril Ramaphosa will brief the nation this Sunday night at 7 p.m. on developments arising from statements made by KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. Mkhwanazi made corruption allegations against senior police officials and the Minister of Police, Senzo Mchunu. In a statement released by the presidency, spokesperson Vincent Magwenya says that President Ramaphosa has been seized with the matter through consultations and will take the nation into his confidence this weekend.
The president was attending a BRICS summit in Brazil this past Sunday when General Mkhwanazi outlined numerous allegations at a media briefing. The president undertook to attend to this development on his return from Brazil in view of the implications for national security. President Ramaphosa has been seized with this matter in recent days and will follow in various consultations.
Both the DA and the EFF have laid a complaint with the Ethics and Executive Members Committee against Police Minister Senzo Mchunu. This is after Mchunu in March this year denied in Parliament knowing Brown Mokgotsi, but on Wednesday, Mchunu issued a statement saying Mokgotsi was his comrade. The DA has laid a criminal complaint against Mchunu for misleading Parliament, while together with the EFF also want the Ethics Committee to probe this matter. This is what Mchunu told the Police Committee in March.
I got somebody insisting that there's somebody who is going around saying he works with me wherever I am, he is there. And I said, show me the face. And it got to a point where he showed me the face and I told him, I don't know this person.
The EFF Chief Whip Nothando Noluchungu elaborates.
These issues that they want to discuss are the issues that are in their political manifestos. For the president to avoid to address those things within the constitutional structure, which is the parliament, we feel very strong that this is very unconstitutional, also backed by Section 213 and 215 of the appropriation of the funds of the state, that the parliament has got an ambit, it's got a power to endorse.
The ANC Youth League chairperson in Mpumalanga, Bethwel Zunguza, has called for the removal of inefficient leaders in government. Zunguza says to honor the late former Deputy President Mabuza's effort in uplifting communities, inefficient leaders must be removed from government. Zunguza was speaking at the memorial service of Mabuza that is currently underway at the Polar Sports Field in Masoyi, Mpumalanga. Zunguza elaborates.
Those who are late, who have been deployed, having the deployment of the ANC, they must be removed and instill people who want to work for the ANC. We are sick and tired to wake up every day, corner to corner, township to township, being insulted because of people who want to destroy the African National Congress. They are busy gallivanting with the blue light left and right. It's high time those who are tired, they must go home and sit in honoring the Deputy President.
At least 15 Palestinians, including 8 children and 2 women, have been killed in an Israeli strike near a medical point in central Gaza. They had been waiting at a medical facility in the center of the territory. The BBC's Emir Nada has the details.
It was a massacre, cried one mother kneeling next to her lifeless child. Videos show bloodied and injured children brought to the Al-Aqsa hospital in central Gaza's Deir al-Balah neighbourhood. Other videos shared on social media appear to show the immediate aftermath of the strike, with families scattered across a street, some severely injured and others not moving. According to local reports, those killed were queuing for children's nutritional supplements and medical treatment. The Israeli military told the BBC it was targeting a fighter involved in the October the 7th Hamas attack and regrets harm to uninvolved individuals.
Recapping the top story, President Cyril Ramaphosa will brief the nation this Sunday night at 7 p.m. on developments arising from statements made by KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. I am Mondela Mbana for SAFM News Headlines at 4:30.
And it's a very good afternoon to you. In your SFM Sports Headlines, it is athletics news. The European Court of Human Rights has found that Switzerland denied Caster Semenya a fair hearing in her long-running legal battle over testosterone regulations. And in soccer action, we are kicking off with women's soccer. Banyana. Well, WAFCON game tonight against Tanzania will bring you the build-up. That's right here on the National Pulse.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg is slow moving towards Crown Interchange. The R21 northbound in Centurion has a crash reported just before Nelma Pierce Drive. In KZN, the N3 eastbound in Ashburton, a stationary vehicle after Market Road, and the N3 westbound, a stationary truck at Key Ridge. In Cape Town, Victoria Road outbound, slow moving through Woodstock, and Viking Way eastbound in Epping, slow moving towards the N7 Jakes Hadwell Drive. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation.
The Twiga Stars want to impress the Tanzanians with maximum points, while Banyana won nothing but a win as a reminder that they are the continental champions. This is the Group C clash of the Total Energies Women's Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2024. Catch the glittering clash between Tanzania and South Africa on Friday 11 July at 8:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and S3. Also available on SABC radio stations at 9 p.m. Where Africa competes, South Africa connects. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
You are listening to SAFM Radio this Mandela Month.
It is in your hands now.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, I'm going to welcome your calls as soon as I can get them. So do connect live on the air. When you get the chance, you can send us a WhatsApp text or voice note or tweet out right away as well. Now, you also know every Thursday around 4:15, which comes up imminently, we have this wonderful collaboration between SFM Radio on the one hand and Channel Africa, that in relation to the countdown to G20. So that happens again this time around, and we'll talk about the ABSA's Africa Blockchain Report, and that comes up so imminently. To get us there, however, let's talk about the Health Minister, Aaron Motsoaledi. He's in the news. Remember, yesterday he called in on the show and listened to that podcast. Some very interesting things he said about private healthcare and public healthcare and the solutions of the 70 billion rand subsidization of effectively medical cover by the state, right? And what that means. Today is another day. Today he was at the 2025 UNAIDS Global AIDS Report launch. Now, this is what the minister had to say about South Africa and the journey it's been on with ARVs.
It's a wake-up call. A wake-up call. Because whether we like it or not, it is the responsibility of every government to provide for its people. It's not the responsibility of other governments. I understand the issue of solidarity, but every government on this planet has got a responsibility to provide for its people. That's where it must start, which means there must be very clear political will. Because I agree with Mama Winnie here, that this type of relationship where we depend on one country, and when the country is in some negative mood, the whole world collapses. Yes, it's scary. In fact, I was asking myself, how did we arrive here, where all of us depend on one country? Because when this announcement was made, I was boasting to my cabinet that, no, don't worry, we're buying our own ARVs to the tune of 90%, which is good. I said the other 10% is funded by Global Fund, which is true. And I said that is not touched by PEPFAR. And I was proudly saying that. Only to discover that 1/3 of PEPFAR funding, of global funding, is from PEPFAR. And I was, here was I. No, don't worry, Global Fund is still with us 10%. Then Global Fund said, by the way, and I was asking myself how we arrived there. Now we've received a letter from Global Fund that because PEPFAR is pulled out, part of the 10 billion rand which we're getting over 3 years, about 1.4 billion will no longer come. What do we do, as Reverend Diaz has said? Roll out and die. No, we can't allow that. We can't allow that. That's why we've been working around the clock. And I also want to state that it's not about the country being rich. I'm quite convinced about that. Let's go back to the history of this pandemic. There was a time when in South Africa we were lost and not providing ARVs. Next door to us was Botswana. We're not richer than Botswana. They are the first to provide ARVs. And they did so long before we even started, even though we are a bigger economy. And at that time, the economy of South Africa was doing very well. We had access, funds and all that. The other country that went in the starting blocks before us is where Mama Winnie is coming from, is Uganda. They also started ARVs before us. And we are still a bigger economy than them. So we can make a start. And this is what I want to promise you and the world. When I said we are going to get rid of this disease, right, there is hope. There is hope of lenacapavir. There is hope. That is going to change the game. It's a game changer. And I can promise that we will move mountains and rivers to make sure that every adolescent girl who needs lenacapavir is going to get it. I'm making that promise. I made it in Parliament. Because it's a game changer. Once you do that, because it's prevention, can we imagine, we've already started putting up a plan of how many young girls, numbers and all that. We already have that and we are planning. And when you ask me where we are going to get the money from, I will tell you this. In 2010, we asked the same question. When we said we'll test 15 million people and put them on ARVs, we were asked, where can you afford it? And my answer is, can we afford not to? I'll give the same answer today.
Can we afford not to? As always, pretty forthright in his views. Is he right? The Minister of Health, Minister Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, right? Okay, here's some comments. We've got Ashraf and the producer. According to the News 24 report, an audit was conducted on Inkwezi, the presidential jet, and found that no meaningful and reliable service was done on the aircraft since 2022. Hence, the president had to use the commercial flight to the BRICS summit. Interesting point. If you're telling us that, let's follow up on that to say, really, is it a case of out of order? There's more than that. The MK further comments, we'd like to hear him say that all ministers implicated in state capture will be fired from Greta in KZN. Ashraf Ramaphosa will not shoot himself in the foot knowing that he gets funding from corruption from Mabena in the Val. That's your allegation. Got that. And then Felix saying MKP's Kosana mentioned an interesting relationship between Mahotsi and Ramaphosa as a provincial coordinator of this campaign in the Northwest. Let's pause on that because we have this unique collaboration. SAFM, Channel Africa, talking
Do
G20.
we have those strategic leaders or strategic advisors that can project into the near term and the long term to be able to take advantage of such situations? This is a huge opportunity for those nations, especially the 5 of them. They can transform their nations. They don't have the burden of overpopulation like many of the big economies in Africa. They don't have too much debt burden on them. Several of them, I checked them up, no so much debt burden from either the
Okay,
World Bank
let's do this. We can play one more voice note if I can, and it relates to the TRC.
Ashraf, people are quickly to talk about commission of Mr. Zondo. We had Truth and Reconciliations commission that cost billions also, and the apartheid people and the stepsons and daughters are still in our parliament. No one is wearing orange overalls, but we are so quick to say Zondo commission. Yo.
Curator. It takes us to exactly 16 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. In just a moment, our weekly G20 feature.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa and SAFM, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
Now, APSA's Africa's Blockchain Report 2025, blockchain's multifaceted role in economic development, shows that blockchain technology will be key in driving inclusive, sustainable growth. However, these technologies raise questions about the risks associated with crypto assets. And this is what we're focusing on this afternoon on our G20 feature. A very good afternoon to you, Ashraf Garda.
Thanks, Tommy. Yeah, like the collaboration between SAFM and Channel Africa as we count down to G20 and we pick up some of the most important issues that certainly the G20, those in leadership would have to cover in the next few months. Now, one of them, and you've touched on the blockchain report. So what about the vulnerabilities around crypto assets? So there's a plus, but are there minuses too? Now, the G20 is working closely with the Financial Stability Board, which is the FSB, to finalize a crypto asset policy implementation roadmap. It sounds very confusing, and maybe it is. The question is, do we have a crypto policy roadmap even in South Africa? But this is globally as well. So they're trying to do that would seek to promote coordinated policy and regulatory responses.
You speak, Asha, about confusion, and I think many are still very much a bit in the dark as far as cryptocurrency is concerned, crypto assets and blockchain technology. But we have just the man to help us unpack all of this. So what they are, how they've been trading, when they've enjoyed the bullish markets, and to unpack the pros and the cons associated with the crypto assets. This afternoon, we're joined by Nkaiseng Oratile Ralipedi, Digital Product Manager, Stablecoin at Absa Corporate and Investment Banking. A very good afternoon to you, Nkaiseng. Good to have you with us this afternoon. So when you look at the Africa Blockchain Report,
What would you highlight, perhaps, as some of the standout trends and the insights revealed in this report? And why did you as ABSA deem it necessary and important to put a study of this nature together? Welcome. Good afternoon.
Thanks, Tammy, for inviting me. Am I audible first before I go off on a rant?
Loud and clear.
Thanks so much. So I guess there's a few things that we need to take away from what we've observed out of the report. The first one is you're seeing record-breaking venture capital funding in relation to blockchain technology, but even when you compare it to other sectors, like other fintech sectors. So you're seeing a lot more flows that are targeted toward blockchain solutions and blockchain products. So that's the first observation from the report. The second one is, and this is really interesting for me specifically, is that you're seeing a convergence between blockchain technology and AI solutions more specifically. So you're seeing a lot more companies leveraging artificial intelligence and grouping that with the underlying blockchain infrastructure to offer new services and products to underserved or underbanked communities. So we thought that was a really interesting observation as well. The other observation that we took from it is that you're seeing a lot of purpose-driven sort of innovation, but also a lot of purpose-driven sort of investments. So it isn't companies who are just looking to raise capital for the sake of raising capital. These are companies who are targeting specific issues that we're seeing across the continent in relation to financial services and bridging the inclusion element in relation to people who don't necessarily have access to those financial products. So those are some of the observations that we're seeing. And at ABSA, particularly at corporate investment banking, we're seeing that proliferation in digital assets across the board at scale in a way that's really interesting for us to look at. And so that's why we thought it was really important for us to support this particular blockchain report in focusing its particular application to these areas that we find really fascinating and interesting at ABSA CIB.
Let me come in there. It's Ashraf Ganda here in Haysang. Now, of course, we can talk blockchain technology across the world, but we can bring it back to Africa in particular. So how is blockchain technology transforming this critical financial services sector just in the continent of Africa only?
So there's a lot of ways in which you're seeing this happen. So I think I mentioned it a little bit ago, Asha. So one of the ways is around credit facilities. So these are, for instance, companies who are looking at providing credit facilities to people who otherwise wouldn't be able to have that access. So that's one way in which we're doing it. The other way that is especially interesting for us at ABSA CIB is what's called tokenization. So ideally what tokenization is just making something that is offline or in sort of tangible, bringing it into the digital space. So for instance, when you're buying a stock, you need to buy the whole stock, right? So it's really difficult to buy fractionalized amounts of those stocks. And that's what tokenization really offers in a way that's really novel. So suddenly people who otherwise don't have enough capital to invest in sophisticated financial products can now buy fractions of that, and they can now suddenly have access to these products in a way they never otherwise would have been able to. And that's where the power of the technology really comes in. You're able to start now fractionalizing all of these things. So some people even take it to an extreme, right? You can fractionalize up to 79 decimal places. I doubt anyone's trying to invest up to 79 decimal places, but that's part of where the value add really is. And that's where it's really bridging those key financial infrastructure and key financial access specifically for people who otherwise wouldn't have had that access to begin with.
It really sounds incredible. It sounds like a minefield of opportunity. But like everything with opportunity, there's always the flip side of it. And I think that's one of the things that the G20 countries are grappling with right now, is how do you ensure that there is, I guess, safety due to the lack of regulatory compliance in the blockchain economy. It's quite vulnerable to risks like money laundering, crypto asset, policy implementation. So how can the crypto asset policy implementation roadmap really help to curb money laundering and counter terrorism financing? Because in as much as you've highlighted all of the opportunities, there's also the flip side of that. Is there regulation enough to regulate the space?
So that's the first thing that really needs to be done at scale. there needs to be some level of regulatory harmonization that establishes what exactly the rules and guidelines that crypto companies need to abide by. At the moment, there isn't that, right? So there isn't sufficient regulations in each of our markets, specifically as Absa, that really says, okay, this is exactly how you need to implement these solutions in a way that really protects that end user. Ultimately, it's really up to us, I guess, as a financial institution to make sure that we're in the best place as possible to do so. So that's the first one. The second one is it comes to a deepened understanding of what the technology provides. So what is really important for people to understand is, yes, it is true that there are bad actors in the technology, but what the technology offers is a level of transparency that doesn't otherwise exist, right? So you're suddenly able to start tracing and tracking those illicit funds in a way you otherwise wouldn't be able to in the traditional sort of space, right? So on chain, I can see that you paid this particular wallet at this particular time, and I don't have to rely on a counterparty to verify that information. Absa can go and check that information firsthand, and we can extrapolate that information to really make sure that A, the end user is protected, but the wider countries in which we operate in are also protected. So those two things are really important, like, to put across. The one is we do definitely need regulatory harmonization, but the other one is we need to look at the technology and see where it is that it can take off some of those conditions around anti-money laundering or any identification of those bad actors. And that's really where the unique power of the technology actually exists.
If I can just come in there, now, we do know that amongst the countries, Japan, South Korea, India, that's 3 countries that are part of the G20 countries. They've already embraced the use of cryptocurrencies, right? But there are also, other issues around downsides, which we've touched on already, right? In terms of, balancing financial integrity without stifling innovation, it's an interesting thought about doing that, right? Are there gaps that need to be plugged?
Definitely. So we need to understand 3 specific things. So the first one is there needs to be an established amount of trust, and that comes with the regulations. Ultimately, the end user can't trust a particular company unless it's licensed and regulated. So that's the first one. The other one, and you just mentioned it now, is there needs to be a really delicate balance between the innovation itself and the regulations that I just mentioned above. Like I said, unlike the other technology stacks that you otherwise would be accompanied to in how you make traditional payments, this particular technology allows for you to have a unique sense of transparency. So regulations need to take into account just the extent to which the technology itself already can protect the end user and the end customer. So those are some of the ways we need to look at it. And then finally, we need to reduce illicit use. That is the key part that is really important. We need to be able to be in a position where we have both the regulatory and the technology infrastructure to protect the end user. So those are really the 3 top of mind sort of aspects that need there.
All of these conversations and discussions, Ngai saying, are really leading towards the G20 summit, which is taking place in November this year. So what are some of the things that the G20 finance ministers or even their central banks should be considering and putting in the forefront as far as policy is concerned around cryptocurrency? And I guess the second part of my question is, as Africa, what should the finance ministers or the central banks be prioritizing in promoting intra-African trade and supply chain in the blockchain economy?
Thank you so much, Samir. So there's actually a few of them for them to observe. So the first one, and we've spoken about this throughout this interview, there needs to be a standardized global crypto regulations. The reason why I keep emphasizing that is that the technology is meant to be borderless by definition. So there needs to be a joint sort of effort in building out those regulatory conditions so that we can map out really where it is we can play and where we shouldn't be playing. The second one is around boosting intra-Africa trade, leveraging blockchain technology. Like I said, because it's borderless, that's why you're seeing more and more consumers use things like stablecoin to facilitate things like international payments or remittance flow, because the technology, A, is cheap and efficient to do so, but also it enables you to settle the counterparty instantaneously. And leveraging that particular technology, we need to look at where the synergies would be in boosting that intra-Africa trade. The third one is around championing financial inclusion. That's really important because of the underlying technology provides that access, right? So I gave you an example around tokenization and being able to fractionalize stocks, equities, gold, or any other product really to decimal points enough that people who don't have the capital right now to access those products can suddenly start accessing it. That's the financial inclusion sort of play. And then the other thing is around the technology stack itself, specifically around that regulatory piece. So what the technology also offers you is real-time regulatory access to the international payment instrument or any other financial product that you can extrapolate that information in real time. And then a regulator doesn't have to wait for end of day reporting or end of month reporting. They can access that information in real time. So those are some of the ways in which you can strengthen sort of that public-private innovation partnership between regulators and the private sector,
Right.
particularly to build those products that are both innovative but also consumer protection focused.
Okay, let's leave it at that. Nkai Singh Oratile Ralepeli, thank you for your time. And of course, Tommy, as always, thanks for your connection. We'll do it again next week, in fact, yeah, as this unique collaboration between SFM Radio and Channel African, doing this together as in this build-up to, as you've heard, the November G20 summit. So this takes place every single Thursday around this time, 4:15 to 4:30. And I welcome your reaction to all of that. For now, let's get to the news headlines. Yes, on
That's Ashraf Garda and myself, Tammy Ngubeni. They're wrapping up our weekly
Champions need motivation above and beyond winning. South Africa, show your love and support for the WAFCON defending champions by Banyana Banyana. Witness the CAF Total Energies Women's Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2024 from 5 to 26 July 2025 on SABC Plus, S3, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC radio stations. Where Africa competes, South Africa connects. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Spar brings you super savings. Get 450-gram Bokoma Wheat Bix original only for 27.99 and save 9 Rand. Or 1 litre liquid fruit for just 26.99. Save 11 Rand. Plus, you could win your share of 6 million Rand in instant cash. Price is valid until 21 July 2025. While stocks last. T's and C's apply.
Thank you, Ashraf. On the news headlines, President Cyril Ramaphosa will address the nation this Sunday night at 7 p.m. on developments arising from statements made by KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. The South African Reserve Bank's Prudential Authority says it is difficult to assess the potential impact of tariffs on the economy or financial systems at the moment. And the leaders of Britain and France are holding talks at Downing Street on the last day of President Emmanuel Macron's state visit. A full update follows at the top of the hour with Greg Hose.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 northbound in Boysens has a crash reported before Crown Interchange, and the M1 southbound in Weltevreden Park, roadworks with traffic restrictions before 14th Avenue exit. In KZN, on the M7, there's truck congestion at South Coast Road, so expect delays, and the M4 northbound in Umhlanga, slow moving towards the M41 interchange. In Cape Town, the N2 outbound is slow moving towards Bunga Avenue and the N1 outbound slow moving towards Okavango Road exit. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Right, Zai, lots happening in the world of sport, but there's no question the biggest story at this point in time has got to be what's happened or not happened with Caster Semenya.
Oh yeah, Caster sprinting through the legal red tape like it's the finish line, and we can feel it because, I mean, her perseverance in overcoming obstacles like this has definitely, showed that she is, the poster child for injustice. And this verdict is just something That's a new personal best. That's right, Caster Semenya securing a significant victory at the European Court of Human Rights Grand Chamber, which ruled Switzerland denied her a fair hearing in her fight against World Athletics testosterone regulations. While it didn't overturn the rules, the decision allows her case to return to Swiss courts. And Semenya, now coaching, sees this as a win for human rights, not just for herself. And she's been awarded, and that's over, I think, £80,000 for legal costs. Let's go to soccer news. Former Sekhukhune United midfielder, that's Kamohelo Sithole, has expressed delight after signing with Marumo Gallants ahead of the 2025-26 PSL season. And he's looking for a lot more game time.
Yeah, for me, I always go for more challenge. I challenge myself to get better. It's not about what the club did, but it's about what I can offer to the club. Since they came to the table and told me that they can offer me more playing time, and I always wish to play more games so that I can showcase my talent.
Now, Banyana remain unbeaten at the Women's Africa Cup of Nations after their 2-0 win over Ghana, featuring goals from Linda Motlalo and Jermaine Seposenwe. They'll face Tanzania tonight, and a victory will secure their spot in the knockout stages with a match to spare. And you can catch the action live on SABC Sport. Rugby now, Owen Farrell has been named on the bench for the British and Irish Lions final tour before the Test series against Australia. The 33-year-old, who joined the tour last week as a replacement for the injured Elliot Daly, is one of two outside backs amongst the replacement for the game, and that's with Marcus Smith alongside him. And we also have nearly 2,500 athletes from 206 registered countries. They'll compete at Singapore 2025, showcasing the best of aquatic sports from the 11th of July to the 3rd of August. A record 77 medal events will be contested, with the addition of the men's and women's 3-kilometer knockout sprints in open water swimming, and the championships will also feature a record prize pool money of more than $6 million. We'll be back top of the hour here on the Sports Desk. I'm Zai Khan.
Perfect, Zai. We'll hold you to that. Thank you.
Botswana is in high spirits to stop the West Africans. However, the Super Falcons want to illustrate why they are 9-time African champions. This is the Total Energies Women's Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2024. Catch the superb clash between Botswana and Nigeria this Thursday, 10 July at 8:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and S3, where Africa competes, South Africa connects. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
CFI, a global leader in online trading, is now in South Africa. Access 15,000 plus instruments, currencies, stocks, metals, crypto CFDs, indices, futures, and more on world-class platforms. Enjoy zero pip spreads, no commission fees, and 24/7 support for confident trading. Visit CFI.trade for a secure, transparent trading experience. Don't miss the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda, Tuesdays at 16:45. Proudly sponsored by CFI. CFI Financial, an authorized financial services provider. T's and C's apply.
Kathy Mohlahlana on SAFM.
In light of what was said by General Mkhwanazi and the fact that Mr. Matlala's profile was now in the public space or raised because of those allegations, then it was also in his interest for him to be moved to CMAX prison.
And we were asked, why is this inmate at CMAX? The National Commission then provided a response that no, this offender had to be moved there because we confiscated a mobile phone. We never issued a statement to that effect.
And the fact that you are unable to provide an answer as to whether this happened before or after the briefing by General Mkhwanazi in and of itself will raise questions.
It's not a matter of being unable, but we are not going to come on air and then give detail in terms of security operations.
Singabako Ngumalo.
If you're ready to talk, I'm here to listen, and nothing is off the agenda.
My name is Renelle Tamlin Donnelly, and I play striker. What do my teammates call me instead of my actual name? As you know, guys, because I wear a weave, so they call me Slay Queen. Guys, I slay it, so yeah, my favorite hairstyle is a weave. Have I already planned my secret celebration for when I score my first goal at WAFCON? I have, but secret is the code, so tune into SABC Sport to catch my secret celebration in the WAFCON tournament.
Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
All the numbers coming with Makwe Masilela, who, as you know, is the Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Makwe, you've got news locally and globally. What are you going to start with?
Afternoon to you, Ashraf. Yes, the dollar fell further from a 2-week high as Trump's latest tariff salvos failed to shake markets, except in Brazil, where they were threatened with a 50% levy that sent their currency sliding. An additional benefit for the rand was that the dollar felt what we call additional weight from a sharp decline when it comes to U.S. Treasury yields. It seems, Ashraf, the most worst-case scenario for trade tariffs is unlikely, and itself increases demand for risky assets like stocks, and sentiment also drawing support from the Fed minutes, where the popular opinion seems to be that interest rate cuts will be appropriate later this year, and signs of continued economic strength, confidence in the upcoming earnings season, and also great hopes for AI have given traders the conviction to drive equities higher, even as doubts over trade policies still persist, and the market sensitivity towards tariffs seems to be diminishing, and our May manufacturing production increased by 0.5%, and that itself was a turnaround and snapping a 6-month losing streak, while traders awaited the potential impact of U.S. tariffs on global economic growth, and further note that elevated interest rates makes borrowing more expensive and reduce demand for oil, but a weaker dollar is limiting oil prices to fall much harder. Brent crude is now down 1.5% at $69 a barrel, and for some time now, the yellow metal has been trading between $3,300 and $3,450 as it grapples with pressure from the dollar and limited safe haven demand. Today, broader metal prices gained ground as the dollar weakened. We see gold now is up 0.1% at 3,318. Platinum is down 0.4% at 1,361. And global markets are mixed, with the JSE reaching new records highs before retreating, with resources leading the pack, and the rand firmed 0.4% against the dollar, 17.75, 24.04 against the pound, and 20.73 against the euro.
And we got all of that. Thanks for that, Makwe Masilela. We'll do it again tomorrow. Don't forget the full market update. 1 hour of it, in fact, comes up from 6 to 7 this evening with Jimmy Moyaha. So do not miss that.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
All right, we'll be connecting. It's been a busy time for many people, including the African National Congress. They've been honouring the former deputy president across multiple platforms around the country today. We'll be connecting with the SABC News reporter who's been covering this story pretty shortly. But in the meantime, there's been tribute and continued tributes and updates. And here's one from Paul Mashatile.
Of the African National Congress National Executive Committee, I wish to express my gratitude to the family and our government for providing us with the opportunity to pay tribute to this remarkable, disciplined and committed South African comrade David Dabede Mabuza. While we are here to celebrate his life, we also acknowledge that his untimely passing has left us scarred and deeply grieved. Maqabane, mphakathi wonke waseMpumalanga siyavumelana ukuthi ukuhlangana kwethu namhlanje akukhona okujwayelekile, akukho mnandi neze. To the family and friends, nathi amaqabani lesihlala la ku naye sizume kangaka resembles a final fall of a mighty tree that has over the years provided us with shade, fruit, wood, herbal leaves, and a vantage point for survival for many. Like a tree that anchors the soil and protects it from erosion, Comrade Didi has, since the early stages of his life, has been hailed by his family and the community as an anchor of hope, a broker of peace, peace in broken families, and a facilitator of solutions to both individual and community challenges. This is a character he carried with him even when he joined new communities as a youth, as a student, as a teacher, local political activist, and also as a public representative. He was part of young activists to establish local youth congresses. Youth Congress structures that were a precursor to the South African Youth Congress and the ANC Youth League after the unbanning. He was an active member of the student movement and formed part of AZASO, the Azanian Student Organization Leadership Collective at Mgwenya College, where he was trained as a mathematics and a science teacher. As a teacher, we saw him involved not only in education struggles, he led teacher struggles and established new structures like the National Education Union of South Africa that was later amalgamated with other teachers' unions to form what we now know as the South African Democratic Teachers Union, SADTU. We are also informed that Comrade Mabuza collaborated with other maths and science activist teachers to form a collective that broke down racial and ethnic barriers by offering extra maths lessons to students in the then Kwangwane, Kazankulu, and the Leboa schools. Comrade Mabuza emphasized the importance of education as a tool for liberation and transformation. During apartheid, he aligned with the progressive organizations advocating for a non-racial, equitable education, demonstrating his commitment to education as a pillar of social justice. He was also active in the establishment of structures of the National Education Crisis Committee in the then Eastern Transvaal Lowveld region. Comrade Mabuza became the chairperson of the Lowveld sub-region of the Eastern Transvaal ANC.
Right, well now now we'll move on based upon that position. Let's find out exactly what's happening with regard to the memorial services with Michael Mdluli, the SABC News reporter in the Mpumalanga region. Michael, it's always good to connect with you on the National Pulse.
Yes, good afternoon to you, Ashraf, and to your listeners at home.
Thank you. Okay, now I understand there's services by the ANC specifically around the country. Where are you today, at which one?
Well, I've been stationed at the main memorial service of the late former Deputy President David Mabuza, which was held at the Paula Sports Field, just where Mabuza grew up in Masoyi. So this is where I've been stationed for the whole day of today.
All right, tell me more about how that has played out in terms of, who's there, who spoke, what has been said, whatever you think is important.
Well, we had so many speakers from members of the ANC in the province to national, but then we also had speakers from the children of the late David Mabuza. Just when they described him as a person who was always there for them, despite being a politician, but he was a father. They described him that he was a good father who always encouraged them to go for what they believe in. He never stood on their way to achieve their dreams. And then we also had a message from the sister of the late David Mabuza, who unfortunately shared a different message to say the way he was always caught up with politics of the country, they never really had time for him. They never really had the time to enjoy his love. They never really had the time to enjoy his space as their brother. But then we just had also we just had a message from the deputy president of the party ANC, as well as deputy president of the country, Paul Mashatile, who spoke fondly of Mabuza. You will remember that Mashatile took over from Mabuza as the deputy president of the party, ANC, and the country. And he's saying that, well, indeed, it was a big task for him, to take over from Mabuza, considering the kind of a person that he was. He was always decisive. So he had to live up to also make sure that. Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you. Continue.
Yes. He spoke that he had to ensure that he lived up to what Mabuza was doing, being the uniter in the party. And they are saying that obviously this is going to affect them as a party as they are in the rebuilding stage, whereby they are trying to build the party to be able to contest and ensure that they emerge victorious for next year's elections.
Okay, just finally, any other points that ahead of other things happening in the next 24 hours, 48 hours before the Saturday funeral that you may want to add, that you may have picked up on that you think is important?
Well, we just spoke to the family spokesperson, Mr. Mbuela, who told us that the arrangements are still the same when the late former deputy president will be laid to rest on Saturday, and that there's still the issue of whether members of the media will be allowed to go to actually the family of Mabuza on Saturday, where he's expected to be laid to rest. But then he said that they are still trying to discuss as a family on whether members of the media will be welcomed on that private ceremony.
All right.
Of yes.
And that's where we leave it to Michael Mdluli. Appreciate your time, SABC News reporter, covering the memorial service, the main one in Mpumalanga for the late former deputy president of South Africa. Your calls, you're on the pulse. I'll hear you next.
Join us for this year's fundraiser, Jazz for Young People concert at the National School of the Arts on the 26th of July. This unique event, perfect for families, is a powerful celebration of youth, creativity, and community spirit. So bring the whole family to enjoy a wonderful day of world-class jazz curated by Zoe Mudicha, featuring the Parktown Girls Band, Tshwane School of Music, The Real DJ Zandi, Kutlo Taro Jazz Band, and many others. Tickets are just 80 Rand and 50 Rand for kids under 12 via Quicket. Jazz for Young People is proudly brought to you by Standard Bank Joy of Jazz.
The Twiga Stars want to impress the Tanzanians with maximum points, while Banyana Banyana won nothing but a win as a reminder that they are the continental champions. This is the Group C clash of the Total Energies Women's Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2024. Catch the glittering clash between Tanzania and South Africa on Friday 11 July at 8:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and S3. Also available on SABC radio stations at 9 p.m. Where Africa competes, South Africa connects. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
This it's called Chasing the Sun. You know that? That's that magical documentary, the 5-part documentary about the Springboks and their amazing tale to winning the World Cup in 2019. It's called Chasing the Sun. So it starts this Sunday, 13th of July at 7:30 p.m. on SABC2, right? So, tune in for all of that. The highs, the heartaches, I think very little heartaches. In fact, it is all about the magic. And then you can also stream each chapter on SABC Plus, right? Anytime, anywhere, no subscription needed. Don't miss Chasing the Sun. This Sunday, 7:30 p.m. and SABC2. Be there when history shines.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Okay, let's get to your calls. I'll get to WhatsApp comments as well from you. And if you're up for tweeting, just do that too. And by the way, I do it sometimes. Let me do that again today. Where are you in South Africa? Where are you in the world? How about you sending us a picture of where you are? If you want to include yourself in a picture with a dial locked, maybe if you're next to the radio or the car, dial locked into SAFM, or if you're on streaming live, just open it up on the website, take a picture of you. Hey, I'll be thrilled and you'll get a shout out for that. Right, Colin in Cape Town, let's get your views. Hi.
Good evening, Ashraf.
Yeah.
The national pulse is not so gloomy as one would think, because I tell you what, you get some amusement out of your radio station with the comments of callers and comments of your guests. No, that.
Well, that's true. Some people are amused at you as well. You know that, Colin. I'm sure you do.
The MK, yeah, everybody gets amused at certain things. But the MK, when you interviewed him just now, he spoke about no commission of inquiry, because what happened? We spent $1 billion and so and so and so and so, and nobody was prosecuted. But doesn't he understand his leader was one of the main culprits in the Zondo Commission, and there may be a few more in his party that were recommended. And it's like the pot calling the kettle black. That amused me. I had a little bit of a chuckle. That's why I say your program gives you a bit of a chuckle now and again, and I enjoy it.
And now everybody connected to the National Pulse having their own chuckle. Listen to Colin talking about the chuckle. Thanks for that, Colin.
Thanks very much.
Cape Town. There we are. Thank you. Right, let's get another view from chuckles to I don't know what. For Yizwa, hello.
Hi, Ashraf.
Yeah, how's it, man? Yeah.
Yes. You know what? There is something that I think the DA, whether it's in the GNU or position, I don't know. Their position right now. This sounds very, for me, childish. Because if Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi opened the case, so why duplicate? Because Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, according to what I understand, he's got more evidence. What are they going to say? Supposing the judge calls them into court, what are they going to say? They're going to wait for General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi to come up and say what he knows. And what are they going to say?
So who's being challenged? Why would you say the DA is being challenged? What have they done?
Exactly what I'm saying, because it seems every day they are playing at a court. No, it's like it's a playground for them. Every time.
But they're not the only ones. The MK party is also going to court on the same issue.
I'm concerned. I'm concerned about the poor people on the ground. That their cases, including I have a case that I opened a long time ago. It's not been actually attended to, because there's a political parties who have got money and connections. Now that we learn that we know, we've been knowing some of us, that the courts, prosecutors and whoever is so corrupt. And I'm concerned about these judges and prosecutors.
Okay.
Also.
Well, I hear you. So if you're saying that you're concerned about them, almost suggesting maybe don't even take the cases to court, and then what happens? What happens next? For Israel, thank you for that. Let's get some further comments. To what degree do you trust the criminal justice system, just, from all different aspects of it all, and particularly now where one may still go about questioning Mkhwanazi's position as to why he effectively, he spoke to the nation. He had his own State of the Nation address on Sunday. Why did he go that route? Many people concerned about the procedures, but do you also think about that maybe he did that because he felt that any other way that's been blocked, and he's tried it out and it's been blocked already? Here's a comment.
Hi, Ashraf and lovely South African senior team as well. It's Eddie from Onnalsres. I'm listening to the MK guy. You know, they know how their leader messed this country. So I think they are the last people to advise us on how to rebuild this country. And even my own organization, people, you know, they have let us down, and they have smashed this country to pieces. So what we need as South Africans, as you can see, simple way is we are on our own. We are still looking for somebody, I don't know where, will come and rescue this country so that we can be able to rebuild this beautiful country, South Africa.
Just don't say a knight in shining armor, because I mean that sort of stereotype just it certainly irks me. But I hear you. Are we genuinely on our own? Well, here's a question to you. I did ask this. You know that now we do know this. The president will talk to the nation Sunday evening, 7 p.m., right? What do you want him to say? I know he's speculating. I'm saying to you, if you could actually script his speech and 3 points that you'd bring up that you feel he has to actually say, what would that be? Let me hear it.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Please, I hear that the president will be talking to us. But I don't trust him. Remember, South Africans must remember that he once said ANC is accused number one. But later on he said he's not going to betray ANC. He rather fall in his sword. Meaning he will never act against anybody in the ANC. Never.
Did he actually say that? I'm talking of this president, that he would never betray the ANC, he'd rather fall on his sword. Did he? I think we need to dig it up. I'll maybe get Keys to dig it up and see if he actually said that. Maybe we've got sound and play that, because that's significant. I somehow would be very surprised. But then, nothing should surprise us here in South Africa and here on the National Pulse. Okay, what's not a surprise, it's consistently so. It's Greg Host reading the news at 5.
Indeed, thank you, Ashraf. In this news update, Ramaphosa to address the nation, and Macron and Starmer hold talks in London. Good day to you. President Cyril Ramaphosa will address the nation this Sunday night at 7 p.m. on developments arising from statements made by the KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Nchasha Mkhwanazi. He made corruption allegations against senior police officials, including the police minister, Senzo Mchunu. Presidency spokesperson Vincent Magwenya.
The president was attending a BRICS summit in Brazil this past Sunday when General Mkhwanazi outlined numerous allegations at a media briefing. The president undertook to attend to this development on his return from Brazil in view of the implications for national security. President Ramaphosa has been seized with this matter in recent days and will, following various consultations, take the nation into his confidence.
Some former MK, APLA and Azanla soldiers say it's painful that after spending years in foreign lands fighting for the liberation of this country, they now have to beg a government they sacrificed to put in power to treat them with dignity. At least 300 former combatants from the armies of the ANC, PAC and AZAPO say after applying for their military veterans pension, they still haven't received anything from the department. Howard Mqolo says they have now been reduced to beggars.
We have to beg the department. We have to beg individuals who have fought for this country. It's not on at all that I have to go to the Department of Military and beg for what is there that I need to benefit. It's very disheartening that as military veterans who are not taken care of. So that's why then I have to say to the minister, as a mother, my request is for you to put yourself in our shoes as military veterans.
The ANC's national chairperson, Gwede Mantashe, has called on party members and supporters to unite ahead of next year's local government elections. He was addressing mourners at one of the 3 memorial services held in honour of the late former Deputy President David Mabuza in Mpumalanga. Mantashe started his address by correcting the accusation that Mabuza was dumped and never supported for a second term as Deputy President in the 2022 ANC elective conference. He says the ANC in Mpumalanga misled Mabuza to challenge for the presidency instead of the Deputy President position during the elective conference. Mabuza resigned from Parliament in 2023, making way for his successor, Paul Mashatile. The families of 3 people killed in 2 road crashes that led to the conviction of a Zimbabwean national say they will appeal his 10-year jail sentence handed down by the Kimberley Magistrates Court in the Northern Cape. He was found guilty on 2 cases of culpable homicide and given a fine or 2 months imprisonment for being illegally in the country. 16-year-old Ompile Jonas was one of the crash victims. Ompile's mother, Omapetse.
The sentencing of Colin Mhlanga, I'm not happy about it. I'm not happy at all. 5 years is too little for killing 3 children. He is not remorseful for killing 3 children. He knows he will get 5 years. But in these 5 years, he will only serve 2 years behind bars. Then he's free. He's out. He will just go and do the same thing again. Killing children, knowing that he will go back to jail and come back again.
The Reserve Bank's Prudential Authority says it's difficult to assess the potential impact of tariffs on the economy or financial systems at the moment. The regulator and supervisor for licensed financial institutions says the Financial Stability Committee has been in talks over tariffs. Businesses and exporters are bracing for a possible 30% US tariffs on imports from South Africa set to take effect on August 1st. The Reserve Bank's Deputy Governor, Fundisha Zibana.
So it is easier to estimate the impact of a tariff when you know what is the level, which goods, and from which date, and then it's clear. But we've had these shifts that have happened since Liberation Day in terms of these announcements. One day you have tariffs, then there is a reprieve for a period, and then there's a negotiation.
The leaders of Britain and France are holding talks in London on the last day of French President Emmanuel Macron's state visit. British government sources say they're optimistic about reaching a deal to reduce the number of migrants crossing the Channel from France. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
We all agree the situation in the Channel cannot go on as it is. So we're bringing new tactics into play and a new level of intent to tackle illegal migration and break the business model of the criminal gangs.
Top story, President Ramaphosa will address the nation this Sunday night at 7 p.m. on developments arising from statements made by the KZN Police Commissioner. That's SAFM News, I'm Greg Hus.
And it's a welcome to your SFM Sports. We're building up to Banyana, aiming to extend a perfect WAFCON record tonight against Tanzania. And we head to Wimbledon action, the 2025 semi-finals with Arina Sabalenka as well as Amanda Anisimova. And it's, Anisimova who took the first set with Sabalenka taking the second and Anisimova leading 5-3 in the third set. We'll bring you all the latest sport at around 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 northbound in Sandton, queuing towards Marlborough Drive. The N3 southbound in Edenvale has a crash at Modderfontein Road. The N1 northbound in Midrand, slow moving towards Samrand Road. And Eskom Pahleli Drive northbound in Pretoria has delays towards Moot Street. In KZN, the M4 northbound is slow moving through Mhlanga. The N2 southbound has a crash reported after the M41 gateway exit, and Umgeni Road westbound slow moving through Springfield Park. In Cape Town, the N2 outbound has a stationary vehicle before Liesberg Parkway, queuing traffic through Hospital Bend. The N1 Service Road outbound is slow moving towards the N7 highway. The M5 southbound slow moving towards Racecourse Road exit, and Voortrekker Road in Goodwood slow moving at the N7 Jakes Hadwell Drive. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Botswana is in high spirits to stop the West Africans. However, the Super Falcons want to illustrate why they are 9-time African champions. This is the Total Energies Women's Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2024. Catch the superb clash between Botswana and Nigeria this Thursday, 10 July at 8:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and S3. Where Africa competes, South Africa connects. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195.
That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
This Mandela Month, SAFM celebrates the spirit of Ubuntu, calling on all South Africans to engage, uplift, and do good for one another. Let's share what we have, lend a helping hand, and honor Madiba's legacy through kindness and action. Join SAFM as we bring you powerful conversations, inspiring stories, and voices that drive change all month long. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Okay, so make a note of this and do not forget watching Chasing the Sun. That's the documentary that'll be on SABC Sport, which reflects that magical history of the Springboks winning the 2019 Rugby World Cup. And it's all on SABC Sport starting this Sunday, 13th of July at 7:30 p.m. and then for the next 5 weeks thereafter. And the good news, it's also streamed, so you can stream each chapter if you download the app SABC Plus, right? Anytime, anywhere, no subscription needed. Don't forget it. Don't miss Chasing the Sun, Sunday, 7:30 p.m. on SABC2. Be there when history shines.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Tell you what, I'm still up for it with you giving your comments about the president. Going to talk to all of us on Sunday evening at 7 p.m. And so my question to you is 3 key points you'd like to hear from him. I know what he's going to talk about in general. We know that, right? But I'm talking about specifics. 3 things specifically you'd like him to say. If you could actually script his speech for you, what would you want him to tell the nation? Now, we chatted earlier on to the MK party about their position of laying criminal charges against the police minister, Senzo Mchunu. There's more, of course. The Democratic Alliance, the DA, have also laid charges. So what have they done? How similar, how different to the MK position? And are they the same people that we're talking about? Diane Kohler-Barnard is the DA MP and Shadow Minister of State Security. Diane, good to chat to you on the National Pulse.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So busy time, I gather, at the Cape Town Central Police Station. You've laid charges. Give me the basis of the charge. What have you said and done?
Well, it's about the contradictory statements he made in Parliament about his relationship with businessman, for want of a better word, Brown Mokgotsi. And this figure is linked to serious allegations of criminal syndicates and political interference in the police service. So in March this year, Minister Mchunu told Parliament under oath that he did not know Mr. Mokgotsi at all. He was very definite about that. However, on the 9th of July, he then backed down. He admitted he did actually know him and described him as a comrade. Now, the one directly contradicts the earlier statement, and of course raises serious questions about whether he perhaps misled Parliament. It's a criminal offence under both common law and legislation governing parliamentary conduct. So the charge is for fraud, knowingly making a false statement to Parliament with the intention to mislead. And then on the other side, and we had the affidavit notarized while we were at the police station, that goes to the Powers and Privileges Committee, and it's a breach of that act and makes it a criminal offence to deliberately mislead or obstruct Parliament or its committees. And this was in the Police Portfolio Committee.
Okay, now, the MK party has taken a similar stance as well, right? I know what you're saying, and I think many people would say, yes, clearly, if he lied in Parliament. But what would be the end goal of that?
Well, I was listening to you earlier as you were putting it out there saying, tell us what you'd like to hear from the president. The one thing I would not like to hear is him saying he's applying his mind, because that immediately puts a 3-month waiting list on whatever his decision is going to be. But look, from what I know is that there is precedent. Think about Nhlanhla Nene, minister. He resigned in 2018 when he initially claimed he did not know the Guptas during the whole arms deal saga. He then backed down and said actually he did know them, and he promptly fell on his sword. He resigned on the spot. And then, of course, one goes to the more egregious situation with Tony Yengeni in 2003, when he was found guilty of lying to and defrauding Parliament. In fact, he was sent to jail. He was sentenced to 4 years, although, as is kind of the tradition with ANC cadres sent to jail, he only served 5 months and was then released. So there is precedent, very clear precedent, and now we have to have the matter investigated properly by the police.
Okay, so that's the one part. I mean, the second part we'll get to in just a second, about others saying, okay, he's defeated the ends of justice, based upon what the comments we've already heard from the KZN police commissioner, right? But staying with the issue of lying in Parliament, right? Would you hope, besides taking it the legal route, that in fact he does, that alone is grounds for resignation, based upon what you've just told me already?
Well, Nhlanhla did the right thing and he resigned. And, the president has done absolutely nothing to address what can only be seen as a crisis of credibility right in the heart of his cabinet. And I mean, it's commonly known that Minister Mkhunu is making a go for the presidency. Right now, I'm imagining he's seeing his whole campaign going down the drain. But it's up to the president. He really has to get on top of things. And I just can't find anybody who says he is on top of things. And we had the Makhonazi revelations, but bear in mind, he stood there on doing a press conference in full fatigues with armed people around him. People outside of this country thought we were in the middle of a coup. And he broke every tenet of policing known to any officer in the country by doing what he did. Now, if he had proof of what he did, there were other ways to go about doing this. But he got it out there. I don't know who's behind him. I have my own suspicions. But there's a lot more to this, I believe, than is initially apparent. None of those things that he claimed have gone through a process of investigation to verify whether they're true or not. So it's not really something at this stage we can comment on. I'm long learned never to take sides in these kinds of matters, and these sort of things always come up when the presidency does. But of course, the Speaker has determined that the committees will sit justice and police together, and my Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence, we sit in a sealed building and sworn to secrecy, etc. So that will be
Would you concur with the ruling of the Speaker? Because would you have concurred with the ruling of the Speaker? Because we chatted in Cameron about it yesterday as well. That as opposed to having a long drawn debate, which may be great media coverage, but in fact may well achieve very little.
Well, frankly, I would have preferred an ad hoc committee, like we had for Nkandla. That went very well. You can subpoena people. I think it has more powers than a portfolio committee. But in the end, those committees will jointly come up with recommendations, as will the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence. Which areas of the claims by Lieutenant General Makhonazi each portfolio will deal with has yet to be determined. That we will all meet separately and determine which areas will be examined by which portfolio committee.
Okay.
So I imagine we will finish that in August.
All right, fine. And as we also understand, when there are legal challenges, it does take its own course, right? But let's go back to what was said at the outset regarding the president. You made the point, Diane, that you don't want him to say, I need to apply my mind to it, and then, you got months, or if not even months, could be much longer, that it just gets sidetracked. Seriously speaking, based upon who the president is, what powers he has or does not have, what would you like him to do on Sunday evening?
I'd like him to clean up the cabinet. How do we have people in Parliament? I mean, the Minister of Higher Education, and obviously the DA laid criminal charges against her, a week ago. The Hawks were in the offices today, fully into the investigation. Now, I'm sorry, we have had ministers kicked out by the president for being charged. It's seemingly involved in criminal activity. And yet in these instances, he's dithering. And it's extraordinary that we have, especially in her case, a raft of lies. People are coming up daily saying, I wasn't on that committee, I don't know what you're talking about. So the whole fabrication is collapsing. And where is the president?
Okay.
We need the answers. We need them fast.
All right, but as you said, you want an axing of the cabinet, certainly significant members. Let's see if the president years you out. Diane Kohler-Barnard, I'd much appreciate your time here, as always, on the National Pulse.
Keeping your family healthy this winter can feel like a daunting task. Try the Lung Shield range. It includes capsules to support healthy lungs and immunity, a syrup for kids that supports the immune system and promotes lung health, and an effervescent with 13 essential ingredients to optimize immune function. Put your family's health first this winter with the Lung Shield range. Available without a prescription at leading pharmacies. Lung Shield, prescribed by doctors, recommended by pharmacists.
Nelson Mandela once said, "There can be no greater gift than that of giving one's time and energy to helping others without expecting anything in return."
What's your Mandela Day game plan this year? Why not lace up those sneakers and hit the ground running at our annual Mandela Day Walk and Run on July 19th at the DP World Wanderers Stadium, Ilovo. You can walk 5Ks, run 10 and 21Ks, and still have enough energy to have fun. It's a whirlwind of fun and laughter, all for a fantastic cause. Every cent goes to support the excellent work of the Nelson Mandela Foundation. Enter on mandeladay.com or register for the virtual race on funnation.org/Nelson Mandela. See you there.
The Morning Brief.
Do we know why our driver's license expires every 5 years and we have to go through the schlep of renewing it?
Look, there's no real or valid explanation to have to renew the license every 5 years, because it's not like you undergo test again or your ability to drive is tested again. The only thing they do is test your eyesight. I can assure you, you or I do not want to drive if you're blind. So it's just a fallacy. And in fact, most countries around the world are at an average of 10 years, some 15, even 20, to just renew the card. And this is, quite frankly, a money-making scheme.
That's Wayne Duvenage, who is CEO of the organization Undoing Tax Abuse.
Thulasizwe Simelane on The Morning Brief. Find the podcast at safm.co.za. X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
I'll tell you what, if you've been watching Wimbledon as I have been watching, and I've watched many of the big games over the last few days, let me tell you this, that you know the world's number one, the big favourite, right? Aryna Sabalenka, well, she's out of Wimbledon. Amanda Anisova beat her 6-4, 4-6, 6-4. So, Sabalenka out, Anisimova in the final of Wimbledon. Let's get on to other things that are more pressing for South Africans, which is issues of funding and the lack of funding and how it affects universities, right? Professor Linda du Plessis has her thoughts on the catastrophic operational and financial strain being placed not on the individual, I mean, that's true as well, but in this case on public universities due to what is seen as the dysfunction of ANSFAS and the sector that's the SETAs, right? So let's find out more about what are the dysfunctions and how to go about navigating all of that. With me, Professor Linda du Plessis, Senior Deputy Vice Chancellor for Teaching and Learning at the Northwest University. Prof. du Plessis, thank you for connecting to us on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashraf, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Roy.
Conversation.
Thank you. Give us a sense of the sense of crisis, because when we talk about dysfunction, it must mean crisis. Give us a sense of this dysfunction and how it plays out.
Well, Ashraf, whilst the total higher education budget appears to be increasing over time, this growth is misleading when examining how the funds are actually distributed. The block grant, which is the core source of direct funding that public universities receive, has declined from 68% in 2015 to 48% in 2025 as a percentage of the total budget. At the same time, the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, or NSFAS, as we often say, has grown dramatically from 4.1 billion in 2015 to 41.3 billion this year. So this shift clearly indicates that while more money is entering the higher education system, the bulk of it is being channeled into student financial aid rather than the universities themselves. So as a result, institutions are left with less funding to support academic programs, research, infrastructure, and staff, all of which are essential for maintaining high-quality institutions. But that's the one part of the problem. But the other one is the dysfunction in terms of the management and how devastating that is for both students and for the institutions.
Let's talk about the dysfunction of management. Explain that.
Well, I mean, for years, universities have had to carry the brunt of NSFAS mismanagement. So there's no prior consultation or support. Every year when classes commence, the funds has not been dispersed. In the middle of the year, students hear that they are defunded, which leaves both them and the institutions in a very difficult position. I mean, every day we read of tens of thousands of students who are left in an accommodation limbo because the people are not paid. I think a very prominent example is when the NSFAS board direct payment service providers, there were 4 of them appointed, Izarku, Co-Invest, Naraku, and Tenet, were appointed, I think 2 years ago, to issue direct payments to students. It came at a huge cost. They did not have the ability to effectively do these payments. Subsequently, NSFAS initiated the legal process to terminate those service providers. But at the bearing end of that were the universities and the students who were called every time at number 99 to say, you now have to do the disbursements to students. Angry students standing in front of the gates of universities. So it was a very difficult and transitional period. And the direct payment service is at the moment again placed in the hands of universities until the end of the year.
So how do you then, propose navigating this? First of all, I mean, even if there's student funding support via NSFAS, even that's not enough. Then the university or the tertiary institutions don't get enough funding. Effectively, they're all compromised. You have government on the one hand who also says, hey, we have only so much money or so little, we can't do more anyway. Considering the fact that we are in a not so much a strong economic growth period. In fact, there's huge problems around retarded growth in this case here. How do you suggest we navigate this and reach win-win solutions?
That's a very valid question, and I want to emphasize that the concern about the sustainability of the current NSFAS model is not a rejection of the principle that students should receive financial support. So on the contrary, I think we all firmly believe that no deserving student should be denied the opportunity to study. However, the current funding model must be critically evaluated. Before the announcement in 2017 was made by the then President Jacob Zuma, he appointed a commission. It was called the Heer Commission, which produced a report which clearly outlined what type of sustainable model, partially loan, partially bursary scheme with the support of the banks, could be a sustainable model for funding higher education. Those recommendations were never considered or implemented. So I think there are a lot of solutions on how to move forward. But first of all, there must be a political will to change the national financial aid to a more sustainable system.
I mean, are there, funders that, when I say funders, and I mean pipelines, revenue pipelines, that we haven't used up to now, that we haven't even considered, that one can tap onto or into?
I definitely think the theatres can be much more productive. I think many banks expressed an interest in partnering with the university. So I think the key is that there must be a structured model so that these funding assistance can be structured in a way that supports the students but also maintain a viable system. We have students studying at the university right now who are holders of CETA bursaries who have to date, and we are now in July, not received any funding for this year. Now, these students need to buy books, they need to sustain themselves, they need to pay accommodation and tuition. So the obvious question is, where does this leave the students? But where does that leave the institution? So both parties are really finding themselves in untenable situations. So it's not just the funding, it's also the funding must be available at the time that it is needed to support the student. Doesn't help if the funding come in August.
That's a good point. Now, you're at Northwest University. I mean, and I'm not going to ask you to talk about just your university, looking at campuses around the country. If I asked you, therefore, to, perhaps give me one word that for you encapsulates the impact of a lack of funding on the universities, therefore, in terms of campus life, what would that word be?
I think it would be a looming crisis. We want to remain not only good public institutions, we want to also be the excellent institutions, world-class institutions, producing world-class research, producing employable graduates. That cannot be done without sufficient funding. And I think I've also said, if you look at the cost of the infrastructure that is invested in our 26 public institutions, that infrastructure must be maintained. And I mean, there's no shortage of examples in the country of what happens when there is poor maintenance. So it's maintaining what we have, but also moving forward in this highly digital era with huge IT infrastructure investment, accommodation needs, and we have the ability to do so, but it comes at a cost.
Okay, a looming crisis is what you say. Much appreciate your time, Professor Linda du Plessis, Senior Deputy Vice Chancellor for Teaching and Learning at the Northwest University. Thank you for your time here on the National Pulse.
Thank you.
Right, let's get, in fact, what I'll do is before we get to the news, there's been comments from you and I want to get as many as possible. But here's one we haven't quite touched on, but it so links to the conversation we had, or rather, I think Tulas or Kathy had with the head of OUTA about renewing your license every 5 years, I think it is.
Good afternoon, Mr. Sheriff, man. Hey, I've got one problem here. I want to renew my driver's license. I want to find that the whole South Africa, the system is down since Monday. You cannot renew the license. You cannot do the license. So can you please find out what's going on with this department, the traffic? Yeah, otherwise these guys are going to find us. Please. That is Aji from Langa in Cape Town. Thank you.
Okay, we thank you for that. We need to find out, do they still have just one printer? I'm just asking the question around that or not, right? I know there's been many delays around that too. I don't know. Let's find out. Maybe I'll check to Temba and Keys to see if we can follow up on that particular story. In the meantime, I would suggest what you do is just at least maybe go to the police station and take out an affidavit stating your position that in fact you want to have your license sorted out, but in fact it's all offline and therefore you can't renew it. I mean, it's at the just base level because you're right. You want to avoid a fine. One thing is worse, you can't renew and then somebody stops you in the street and it's like, no license, it's expired. Here's your fine. You can't afford it anyway. 5:30, here's the news headlines with Greg House.
Quick look at the headlines. The MK party has filed criminal charges against the police minister and the deputy national police commissioner. President Ramaphosa will address the nation this Sunday night on developments arising from statements made by the KZN police commissioner. And the president of the European Commission has survived a confidence vote in the European Parliament. A full update at 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N1 southbound in Roodepoort queuing towards Gordon Road. In Pretoria, the N1 northbound has a crash reported on the off-ramp to Linwood Road, and the R21 Nelson Mandela Drive southbound has a crash reported before Elephant Road. In KZN, the N2 northbound has roadworks reported, one lane open towards the Polito Drive exit, the N3 eastbound queuing towards Key Ridge, and the N2 southbound in Amanzimtoti queuing on 20 Hill. In Cape Town, the N2 outbound is slow-moving towards Bunga Avenue, Jan van Riebeeck Drive southbound in Parow, slow-moving towards Francie van Zyl Drive, and Muway southbound in Khayelitsha has a police incident reported south of the N2 highway bridge, queuing traffic. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, you've got Banyana on your mind.
Yes, the Women's Africa Cup of Nations defending champions. What can I tell about them? They've got a countdown and they're looking to stretch their flawless WAFCON record when they take on Tanzania tomorrow, 9 p.m. in Oujda, Morocco, after a confident 2-0 win over Ghana, thanks to strikes from Linda Motlahlo and Jermaine Seposenwe. The defending champions, they lead Group C on goal difference. Goalkeeper Andile Dlamini says that Tanzania are strong, they're an energetic team, and warns against underestimating them. So win tomorrow night could secure Banyana's spot in the knockout stages, and that's with a game to spare. So good news there. You can catch it as well live on SABC Sport. In the meantime, we can reveal that defender Thabo Modisane will be available as a free agent effective 1st of July next year. The player's agent, Karabo Shabuse, has now confirmed to the public broadcaster that the upcoming 2025-26 season will be the final one at Stellenbosch, a club the centre-back joined almost 2 years ago after Maritzburg United were relegated to the National First Division. Let's go to the Caster Semenya story that has been trending around the world. Well, she secured a significant victory at the European Court of Human Rights Grand Chamber, which ruled Switzerland denied her a fair hearing in her fight against World Athletics testosterone regulations. While it didn't overturn the rules, the decision allows her to return, and that's to the Swiss courts, keeping alive a broader battle for DSD athletes' rights. Now, Semenya is now coaching and sees this as a win for human rights, not just herself. She's also been awarded 80,000, that's euros, and that's for legal costs. Some rugby news, and it's great news for the women's team in South Africa. They're looking forward to their match as well, hoping that things will get better for them. They're also hoping that they can take on the likes of the big champions when it comes to rugby. Plenty of the South African teams looking at a tactical shuffle when it takes Gqeberha by storm. They're looking for bold steps now ahead of the 2025 Rugby World Cup. Their coach, Swes de Bruin, has named Nadine Roos at scrum half. That's a first for tomorrow's second test against Canada at 1:30 in the afternoon. And it's part of a wider shake-up after that 50-20 loss in Pretoria. We also got Behandre Dolph moving to fullback, and Eloise Webb will take the fly-half reins, both in starting roles for the first time. And staying with women's sports, the world number one, Aryna Sabalenka, crashing out of Wimbledon after a shock semi-final defeat to the American Amanda Anisimova, who claimed a thrilling 6-4, 4-6, 6-4 victory on centre court. This marks Sabalenka's third straight Wimbledon semi-final loss as the Belarusian star's quest for a maiden title on the grass continues. And that's where we wrap it up. We'll serve up more sport.
Well, before you go, I mean, that's a huge result, right? And she's been so dominant in this tournament. Like, of course, she's going to win it, right? I'm talking about the world's number one.
Yep.
So I don't. Well, where does that leave us with a potential winner this time?
I've got my money in the women's draw with the Iga Swiatek.
Okay.
Iga.
You've got that. And the men's one happens on Sunday. And I'm making the point, sometimes those things go on a long time. They start at 3, if I'm not mistaken, right? 3 p.m.?
Yeah.
If they go anything beyond 4 hours, they're going to go into Ramaphosa time when he speaks to the nation. So we'll have that debate then on Sunday evening. Thank you.
Wonder what he's serving. But anyway, we'll be back with more sport. That's with Michael Ebenson. He'll bring you Top Sport.
The Atlas Lionesses want to demonstrate that the only satisfying result is a win. Meanwhile, the Teranga Lionesses want to brighten the evening of the Senegalese with maximum points. The North collides with the West. This is the Total Energies Women's Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2024. Morocco is up against Senegal on Saturday, 12 July at 8:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and S3. Where Africa competes, South Africa connects. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the
A new client, a bulk discount, a chance to expand. Business opportunities don't wait, but with a Standard Bank Business Revolving Loan, neither do you. Get up to 10 million Rand in funding, access it anytime, and borrow again as you repay, giving your business the cash flow it needs when it needs it. Keep your business growing with a Standard Bank Business Revolving Loan. Visit standardbank.co.za/business loans to apply. Standard Bank is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
The Morning Brief.
What's your sense? Pack of lies or prima facie case?
I can't say whether it's either or. What I can say, though, that I can't imagine that the provincial commissioner would take the risk that he took yesterday if he didn't have something solid to back it up. It just wouldn't make sense to me. It is literally and figuratively speaking suicidal move if you don't have evidence to back it up. And the fact that he had the amount of senior members sitting around him, task force members and NIU members, what seem to be NIU members in the background, also sends a very, very strong message. We might not all agree on the optics. That could be a debate for another day.
That's Ian Cameron, who is chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Police in Parliament.
Tulasizwe Simelane on The Morning Brief. Find the podcast at safm.co.za.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
And Jimmy hosts the SFM Market Update. Jimmy, there's Wimbledon on the go. That can't be moving markets. So what is moving markets today?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon to the listeners. It seems the markets are also enjoying a bit of a downtime. Probably some market participants and some institutional traders enjoying the Wimbledon festivities that are happening at the moment. But the markets seemingly having a somewhat of stable day considering all the things that we've had to contend with this week. If we look at what we've got coming up on the show, we'll do a bit of the markets a little later on. But what we've got coming up on the show is we're going to be taking a look at some of the developments from the local front. The FSCA has announced that they'd be investing a little over 200 million rand in bolstering their regulatory efforts. We're going to speak to them around that and get a sense of the need for that investment, where the funds are going and what the hopeful outcome is for that. And then we've got a conversation with the team at Standard Bank around unlocking Africa's potential. They are currently hosting the second iteration of their Africa Unlocked conference. It kicked off today and it's going to be running all the way through for the rest of the week. We're going to speak to them and try and get a sense of what it is that they're looking to help unlock and bolster on the African continent. And then we've got a conversation with the team at South African breweries around the illicit liquor market. According to some of the statistics, we're seeing 1 in every 5 drinks, or at least 20% of the alcohol that is sold in South Africa is now illicit or illegal. It's a serious concern for the Drinks Federation of South Africa as well as for the South African breweries. We're going to speak to the head of research at the Drinks Federation of South Africa around that and get a sense of how to combat that. And then because it is Thursday, we've got a small business to spotlight and profile. This week's small business is also a non-profit initiative titled Sunshine Cinema. We're going to speak to the co-founder of that business and get a sense of why that initiative was put together and how it all works. Before we get to that, as I said, we'll do a quick look at how the markets have been performing throughout the day. It's been quite a flat day on the local front. If we look at the all share, only up about 0.1%, the top 40 flat, the resource counters up 0.69 odd percent, while industrials were flat and financials were down 0.49%. So not such a good day for the financial stocks, and that's interesting considering that the rand has been gaining a bit of ground against all of the major currencies, at least today. Against the dollar, 17 rand 72 at the moment. Against the euro, 20 rand and 69 cents, and against the British pound, 24 rand and 3 cents. It's almost a full percent stronger against the euro. 1 Australian dollar, 11 rand and 63 cents. 1 Bitcoin, $111,000 a Bitcoin. So yesterday, after we updated the Bitcoin price, the price went and made new all-time highs in the late evening hours of yesterday. It looks as though we're back to potentially go and retest those all-time highs. In rand terms, we're up at 1,973,000 odd rand, or just shy of that 2 million rand mark. We briefly touched above it on some exchanges earlier today. We're roaming around that 2 million rand mark of Bitcoin, and we're going to take a look at what's been driving that as well a little later on when we come back. The commodity side of things, the gold price $3,320 a fine ounce, a little weaker at the moment, but bouncing off of that 3,300 or below that 3,300 level and coming back above there. I think risk sentiment still very much in the market. Platinum pricing $1,418 a fine ounce. Palladium is now approaching $1,200 a fine ounce at $1,198. Brent crude, having been above $70 a barrel, is now at 68/69 odd dollars a barrel. And if we look at international indices before we go, the FTSE was the biggest winner in London, in European markets rather, up about 1.1%. In Asian markets, biggest winners there were the Hang Seng and the ASX and the Shanghai Composite. Nikkei only real Asian market that finished in the red, down 0.4%. US markets at the moment, the Nasdaq is down 0.1%, while the S&P is up 0.1%. We're going to look at these market movements when we come back a little later on, just after the 6 p.m. news. But for now, Ashraf, back to you.
Okay, great. You have a good show, and of course, Top Sport following up from 7 to 8 thereafter. And in fact, Michael Abramson sort of reminded me that, by the way, not today, but tomorrow is the 500th show of Top Sport. Yeah, 500 tomorrow. You better listen to that one tomorrow. And listen, just by the way, just talking about sport, I need to just raise this issue because, you know, myself and Tumi had this chat with about Wiaan Mulder, whether he should have declared at 367. 34 runs short of Brian Lara's 400. And if you were so caring, then what about the Hashim Amla one of 311? Well, I felt he should not have declared. That's what I felt. Chris Gayle, the West Indian Magic player, said, and I'm quoting him, I think it was an error from his side not to try and go to get it. We don't know if he would go on and get it or not, but he declared on 367 and he said what he had to say. But listen, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get 400 runs in a test match. Come on, youngster, you've blown it big time. Okay. Comment from you and other things like Ramaphosa's big speech coming up on Sunday evening. You're on the pulse. I need to feel it.
X at SFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Okay, you can comment on the issues that have moved the national pulse today, but you can also comment on other issues that we haven't quite spoken about, like the can't renew the driver's license too, and other things that for some reason you feel is really important, and those important human stories there, right? Here's one on the president.
Often there is now, Ashraf, you see, we're waiting for Ramaphosa Sunday, né? Once he came back, he will just announce with him holding his English. After that, the only thing Ramaphosa will form in the commission, which is going to last for a long time. And just after that, it will just blow by the wind. And then that's all about Ramaphosa. Then he go in and maybe they trip overseas.
Okay. You're talking about his English. Did you guys watch that story about Donald Trump meeting with the 5 African leaders that we previewed the other day? And one of them from Liberia spoke so beautifully. And Donald Trump said, and I'm paraphrasing, like, oh, you speak well, you speak really good English. Where did you go? Where did you study? In Liberia. And then others had to remind Donald Trump it's the national language of Liberia, English. And of course, Liberia as a country, Liberia, liberty, was instigated and formed by Americans who were, whose forebears were slaves sent to the USA. Yeah, talking about knowing your history. What about the history of the TRC? Let me get to that. Here we are.
Ashraf, people are quickly to talk about commission of Mr. Zondo. We had Truth and Reconciliations commission that cost billions also, and the apartheid people and the stepsons and daughters are still in our parliament. No one is wearing orange overalls, but we are so quick to say Zondo commission. Oh.
Well, okay, the TRC was very different because the TRC by its nature was amnesty, accepting those that they felt did not testify truthfully. But are there so many others like that just missed the cracks? And I welcome your comments. Now, the medical aid story that was brought up yesterday from the Action SA spokesperson, and then with the Minister of Health confirming that, yes, medical, you got state hospitals, you got medical public health care. And the public health care, because of tax rebates, when you actually take out medical aid or medical insurance, you get a rebate. And he says that is worth 70 billion rands. Listen to that, 70 billion, according to the minister. He said if that, in fact, is shifted towards effectively investing in state healthcare, well, what happens to the standard of state? What happens to the standard of state healthcare? You know what I'm talking about. Here's one.
Hey, I want to check. When everybody now is talking about subsidies and everybody hates subsidies, medical aid subsidies to that fact, what are they going to do then? Because these are work benefits that are won from the streets. People go on strike and win these benefits. Every time they increase, you go to the streets and toy and this increase. So is it going to be negotiations with the union? Our union is even listening to this. Can you get unions to have an opinion on this matter? Thank you. It's Bongi.
I tell you what, besides speaking to the minister, we need to get someone who understands the economy and healthcare and how those work to confirm or refute some of the claims made by the Minister of Health, but to see whether there's a practical way around it outside the issues of the national or NHI, right? Okay, Katu in Midrand. Go for it, Katu. Hello.
Ashraf, how are you?
Yeah, good talking to you. It's been a while. Yeah.
It's been a while. Listen, for me, I think the president's going to announce whatever it is. We speculate a suspension, then he will move people around, and then there'll be investigations and so forth. But unless he first acts on the state capture findings, then it means this is a reactionary government, and whatever he's promised, the ticket of a new dawn and the ticket of non-corruption in this country, it's never going to be realized. I think he's just going to push the goalposts until he's out of government, and somebody's going to have to deal with this hot potato.
But if he does push the goalposts and leave for somebody else, that means nothing will happen for a good few years. I mean, wouldn't that be a disaster? He has to act, don't you think so?
It would, because remember the politician's famous words is vote them out. No, when you say vote them out, it means there's like 4 years that I can mess up completely. By the time you vote me out, I am going out as per the AC's constitution.
Yeah, okay, got that. Let's see how he's going to respond. Listen, if the president doesn't come across forthright and in a position of power this Sunday night and beyond, then you have to, well, what's the opposite of power? Is powerless the right word? JCK in Musina, go for it. Hello.
Ashraf, are you one?
Yeah, pretty good indeed, right? What's your point?
Yeah, man, the president is losing it. Is losing it out, man. You know, there's a difference between emergency and whatever you can name it. This is an emergency. General Mkhwanazi dropped a bombshell. You understand? So the president must time. If President Zuma would have acted. So President, I think, is playing with fire. I'm afraid the president is playing with fire. Maybe Paul or Richard Vane has told him something different. We didn't know. You know, it's time to
okay.
Defensively. Let me rest my case for now.
Well, thanks for that. I rest my case. All legal speak there. I rest my case. Well, look, I mean, I don't know if he's playing with fire, but it's a hot potato for sure. But, you know, some have said he's been sort of delaying. Like, as you know, he's been in Brazil. Let's see what he says on Sunday. That's why I said, what would you like to hear him say? Let's hear it. We'll get to other calls. Klabirwa, you're coming up next.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
The Twiga Stars want to impress the Tanzanians with maximum points, while Banyana Banyana won nothing but a win as a reminder that they are the continental champions. This is the Group C clash of the Total Energies Women's Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2024. Catch the glittering clash between Tanzania and South Africa on Friday 11 July at 8:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and S3. Also available on SABC radio stations at 9 p.m. Where Africa competes, South Africa connects. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
SAFM music, crafted to make you feel real good. Handpicked just for your pleasure. Classics sounding so good, only on SAFM.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
By the way, we are chatting tomorrow. You know, being a Friday, we have the fireside chat. And my guest tomorrow is Sipho Sithole, or Dr. Sipho Sithole. You know, he's been involved in the arts. I think native rhymes, native rhythms probably makes more sense. So we'll talk to him about that and a whole lot more. He's currently on a lecture sabbatical, if that's the right word, in the USA, but he's going to be in South Africa, and we're going to talk to him about some of the connections he's made. It's quite remarkable, his own journey. But for now, what about the journey of the medical cover, right? Tlhabirwa, you've got a thought. Go for it. Tlhabirwa, hello.
Yes.
Yes, you're live on the National Pulse. Thank you for joining in and calling in.
Yes, thank you. Look, I will take on the minister first, on the statement that he made yesterday. Firstly, he said that he goes to public institution. It's true if he goes there, but does he queue on the line, like many of us who are queue? He says that the 70 billion that can be generated from the medical aid can be used to upgrade the state of hospital and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Is it disingenuous of him? Look, before the second parliament, the government has been allocating money for government, for Department of Health. And then there has been improvement. We can take Tembisa example. What's happening in Tembisa Hospital? A rampant corruption. So it does not true necessarily to say that 17 billion will be used to upgrade the setup. Most of it will be lost to corruption.
But you see, he doesn't know that. I mean, to be fair to him, he's talking about the principle, and in fact, it's 70 billion, right? 70. He's talking about the 70 billion rands that is used for subsidy. So he's talking about the principle of shifting that money to public healthcare investment. Now, your second point is different, which is that does all that money actually, will it go to where it goes? But, you know, we talk future tense in a case like this. So who's going to be in charge? Who will manage that process is another question. I think his first point, in principle, when he does tell you that, well, it certainly gets you thinking, doesn't it, Tlhabirwa?
That's something that is incorrect. I want for him to say that. Money has been always allocated to Department of Health other than this 17 parliament after it was cut to take care of those institutions. What was happening to that money? That's the principle.
Okay, I got that. You see, one is about the past, one is about how do we fix things for the future. But then corruption is corruption. That's another issue that does impact the past and the present and the future if we don't sort that out. Thank you for that. Right, let's get other thoughts that we want to pick on. Someone said, comment about, or what is it, the UN rapporteur on Palestine. I just forget her name at the moment, the Italian woman who effectively has been sanctioned by the USA for a position regarding reporting on Palestine, Israel. Well, if you know more, you can certainly talk about that too. And if you want to touch on the Donald Trump Liberia, you speak good English. Which school did you go to? Please do so.
Ashraf, Aaron Motsoledi says, oh well, we shouldn't rely on one country to fund, because when that happens the whole world stops. Well, it doesn't stop. It's just that South Africa has been dependent on grants, especially from the West. Where are the grants from China, from Russia, from Iran? Iran only paid and bailed out the ANC. That's all they did. They've given nothing back to this country. So he's out of order there. If we side with countries who are not true democracies and so on and believe in destroying others, well, we're going to pay the consequences. Mike from Hillcrest and KZN.
Okay, Mike's made his points. Now, what about you and your point?
Good day, Ashraf and fellow listeners. It's Des here from Cambridge. You know, some things will be hard to get rid of, like apartheid trades. So you see, Elon Musk created an AI which has apartheid trades. And you know, sometimes it says a lot about the guy, and that's his kid. So your child's behavior says a lot about the parent themselves.
Okay, which AI? You're talking about Grok? Is that the one you're referring to, or is there more? I'd love to know. By the way, just talking about AI, I was asked this yesterday, in fact, in a breakfast I had with someone who made the point, like, how much do you know about AI, artificial intelligence? And do you say yay or nay, but do you understand the significance of how it changes the way we do things in every sector of society? And if it hasn't quite done so, it's going to do so soon. So what is your AI plan? And I can put that to you as well. you as you're listening, wherever you may be, maybe on the beach in the Eastern Cape, Bishu, maybe, I don't know if that comes to mind, with those communities or Cape Town. What is your AI plan personally, you and your family?
Morning, Kathy, and good morning to SAFM listeners. I feel sorry for that poor guy. Lomhlali Olapho. Royal houses.
Okay, wait, that one has slipped in from this morning, and that's clearly out. Let's see if we can pick out some others. There's just something we need to fix up here. Okay, let me just get Keys to sort that out, because we've got some text or voice notes that's come through from the morning on Kathy's, that was played on Kathy's show. Okay, here's one helping me out with the name, right? Francesca Albanese, the Italian UN reporter. Thanks for that, Nicho in Durban. So there we are. So she has been very critical in terms of her, well, she's not she's a rapporteur, so not reporter, rapporteur. She's been looking into what she found were, the doings of the Israeli government, and be very clear about, according to her, that's genocidal, and she's been consistent. So now the USA has issued sanctions against a series of sanctions against it. I mean, is that unprecedented or not? I mean, and what are the implications of that? So, Nito, thank you for that, for giving me that name so I could remember that one, right? Ashraf, I understand it's been a hectic week with domestic issues. Would you please organize analysis on Elon Musk's American party from Naptel? I think you're right. The reason we haven't is that and we try and focus on at least one big global story a day, and this would be one of them. But others, in the midst of other things, sometimes there's just so much happening that we just can't keep up. And that's true. That's really what it is. We often struggle to keep up with where we are. Now, talking about keeping up, so tomorrow we've got Sipho Sithole as the guest in the fireside chat. That's one thing you need to remember. The other one is, hey, you know what? We try and get a range of different people for that fireside chat, right? And if you are up to giving us suggestions, feel free to do so. Probably the best way to do that is just tweet us along using the hashtag #TheNationalPulse. Here's another one. Mabena saying Ashraf Ramaphosa will not shoot himself in the foot knowing that he gets funding from corruption. Is that how you see it, right? And there was another one that was picked up early on. Okay, I'm going to repeat that, so let me just leave it at that. Okay, I think that's it for the show. Let me just tell you, for you need to know this. It's myself as the presenter, Temba, Keys as the producers, Fusani, who does all the social media work, including the podcasts, and tweets out things in the moment when it happens. We make up effectively the National Pulse team. Then we get roving technical people like Patrick today. That changes every week, but this team effectively makes up the National Pulse, and we are hell-bent on winning every day for ourselves, but certainly for you guys as well, because that's what we do, try and deliver for you, and I hope we're doing so. And when we're falling short sometimes, do let me know as well. And ultimately, winning team, winning nation, the combination matters. At 6 o'clock, here's the news with Greg.
Thank you again. Ashraf. MK party lays criminal charges against the police minister and President Ramaphosa to address the nation. Good evening. The MK party's filed criminal charges against the police minister, Sinzim Qunu, and the